Okay, you ready?
Yeah.
I can see when you're tabbed out, by the way.
Yes, I know you
You
told
get
me.
flashbanged. Hello,
You
everyone, and
told
welcome
me.
back to All Things Real Time. This time for season 2. Welcome back, everyone. Larimbo, can you hear that with the party music going on? Air horn
Yes,
blaring.
yes, absolutely. Welcome everyone. This as always has been a totally intended break. Don't worry about it. Also, this is totally the first time we have done this intro. We didn't have any fucks up whatsoever. We didn't speak for 10 minutes with me muted and him on echo. That never happened. So at least we own another explanation to what happened. Long story short, we met somewhere in Italy, in Genoa.
Mhm.
We
That's
met
good.
up because we had stuff to do. We hang out, we had fun. Tons of gay. Sorry, no.
Yeah.
Yes. And we register. No, sorry, we record the podcast special episode that now serves as the end of season 1.
Hmm.
And originally, we didn't exactly intend it to end season 1 there,
Yeah.
but thanks to the gods and HyperX, more importantly, a
Getting a shout
microphone
out.
bro.
Our first, well, not, I was going to say our first bridge burned. It's definitely not our first bridge burned, that's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. HyperX, man, like your fucking headphone broke twice. Like it broke again. So I got so fucking fed up. I was like, okay, I have to order a new microphone. And then I got lazy and it took a while. But now I have new microphone. Hart complains about it all the time, despite the fact that he's
No,
the one
it's
that
good.
chose it.
It's fine. But I do think
It,
we
it,
need to
it's
explain
fine.
we need to explain the microphone lore a little bit because there are streams from way back. The firstly, I don't know how anyone fucking watched that were run entirely from a laptop, including the laptop mic. And I think if we get enough comments, we'll do an entire podcast using the laptop mic. We'll
We
only
want,
do
we
that.
want
We'll honor whatever the fans
to
say.
regret it.
The I'm sticking up for the fans on this one. I'm a man of the people, and I
Okay.
say laptop mic. But then for a while, when the headphone was broken, because it's broken in like the dumbest way. So basically, it's like the boom mic thing, like the mic that comes off the thing. But because the
Yeah.
cable on the thing broke, if you plug the mic into the headphones, they stop working. So you've been plugging the microphone straight into the headphone port on the
No, straight
laptop.
into the laptop port. So there is like a microphone hanging from a laptop, from like it's the fucking not USB. So what is the
Yeah, it's
other
the three
thing
and a half
called?
mil aux thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's the aux, like just a microphone pulled directly into the aux fucking port.
And it
It
sounds
didn't.
surprisingly not that bad, but it's not good
I
enough
mean,
for podcast quality, that's for
it
sure.
was the same microphone. The problem was that's a microphone for a headset, so it wants to be here and close to my mouth. And if it's like close to the webcam instead of to the computer, it doesn't pick up my voice, but pick up the laptop ventilation system and keyboard. So it was fucking dreadful. But no,
That was
before
interesting.
you're like all like you, I know you guys, oh, blah, 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 we love the old mic. Actually, go look up one of my old stream because it's fucking dreadful, and I will refuse to use it because it will actually be the least viewed. Like people will watch the analytics and watch time is gonna be like. Usually it's like what 10 minutes out of 2 hours.
Yeah.
It's gonna be like 3
10
minutes,
seconds,
even
yeah.
less,
It's
10
gonna be like
seconds.
get absolutely mind blasted immediately upon hearing that mic. Yeah, I mean people have complained about my mic in the past. It was set up pretty poorly, I have to say. So I was like hitting the top over and over again because it was too loud. But the laptop mic would be something else, man. I have to say. That would be unbearable.
You never know. This is like when a certain friend of us said that my voice can sound so different between a real life, good microphones and bad microphones. That is the true Lorimbo experience is the one with the shittiest microphone that maxes out when I scream. And then there's the Lorenzo experience, which is like in real life, I don't actually sound that bad. My voice is fine. I'm still very loud, but my voice
Well,
doesn't peak as
unbearably
much.
loud. Yeah. That's why I was leaning away from you all the time in that real life video, which everyone should go and check out. By the way, that is
Yeah,
the season finale for season 1 of All
it's a
Things Real
very
Time.
good video. It's a very good
I
video.
watching it back, I
Watch
was
it.
like genuinely laughing. I'd forgotten like half the shit we said, including half the shit I had to cut out because it was not safe for YouTube. I mean,
Yeah,
the main thing I had to
we
cut
had
out really is from the end when you were like, and we'll be back next week, and then that thing was filmed in like the middle of May, and it's now the end of June. It's the biggest lie ever told.
So we took a 2 month breaks. That's how long it takes for Amazon to deliver a mic. No, it's not. It took 3 days. I just forgot to fucking. I was
took,
just very hesitant
took literally
on
3 days. Anyway,
specific.
we're in perfect time because Stormgate is just around the corner. I mean, it's a month away, but just around the corner, a month away. We can get back into the podcast swing of things before Stormgate drops.
Yeah.
But more importantly, Battle Aces just dropped.
Oh, I thought this was a video on the topic of abortion.
Oh, I think that's next week when we get.
Oh no.
Have you prepared? Have you been reading? You've been leading up on the
Yeah,
election?
bro, that in Israel Palestine, bro. I'm a fucking expert.
Oh shit!
Oh shit!
You
Cut.
you
Okay.
going woke? Remember? You going pro life?
I've always been woke. I love my work. We should be grifters. I swear it's so easy to be a fucking
Oh yeah.
anti-woke grifter. Like,
Oh
just,
yeah.
like especially in my voice, I just be like, I start screaming, "Oh, the games are shit because everything is woke!" Ah! I just start screaming, but I'm
Bro,
not
we need
bold.
to go
Have you
back a
noticed
few
that?
years. We need to go back a few years to when games weren't woke. Games like Celeste and Fallout and
Of, of Baldur's Gate 3 now.
Bioshock.
Bioshock.
Yeah,
Yes.
games were better when they were just there was no subtext. It was all just
No
take it literally.
politics.
Bioshock, no politics.
No politics in Bioshock whatsoever.
Ayn Rand, who's that? Never heard of him.
Yes, but have you noticed that there is a correlation between the people like that mold about the work games and being bald? I swear,
Uh,
every time I see one of these guys, they're bald. Like, I think they lose their heads. Like, they scream so much about like they get angry about imagine the shadow box imaginary enemies, like the evil work sets. Like, instead of being like, wow, game companies are now shit and everyone fucking pre-order shit, so they don't feel any need to deliver a good product. As we have seen by the infinite amount of scams with like fucking shitty games that get marketed for $80 pre-order, $250 for what's the Russian one, the very famous extraction shooter, Escape from
Escape from
Tarkov.
Tarkov. Yeah.
$250, totally reasonable price. It's what? Don't you want to pay $250?
Wait,
The
isn't
fucking
what's
cost
the
of a
one? Oh,
PlayStation.
it's not Eve, but it's like Eve. What's the one that's what am I thinking of?
Star Citizen.
Yes, there's like, isn't it like 10K and it's still not out? Like,
Star Citizen is honestly, I think it's like a parody of itself, basically. It's
is
like
it?
almost, I would say it was worth all of the money put into it. It's like basically a very expensive piece of art, in my opinion. The art is, but not the in-game art, just like the
Yeah,
whole
yeah,
concept
yeah,
around it is
yeah.
art. This is futuristic art.
It's poetry in motion.
Yes,
But today we're going to
yes.
talk about games that aren't scams. Am I right?
Yes, we are talking about games that we actually managed to play. We didn't even have to pay,
No,
surprisingly.
no. I will say one thing I like about Battle Aces a lot is they've gone pretty mad on just like dropping keys, and I think
Yes,
um from the start, the email that they sent out was saying like when you get in, not like if you get in, but like when you get access. Um,
yeah,
so it does seem like they're really keen to get basically as many people in as they can. And then streamers obviously have been a really big kind of part of getting Battle Aces going so far, and you could like get a key pretty easily from people that were just like dumping random keys 10 at a
yeah,
time in their Twitch chat. And there's been some really big names streaming Battle Aces, which has been really good to see. It seems, and I think kind of, yeah, converse to Stormgate, where Stormgate went with a really big marketing campaign long before you could play it, and they were really pitching to basically every RTS crowd, where they were saying like, oh, it's made by the StarCraft devs, it's going to have heroes like Warcraft, it's going to replace Age of Empires and Grey Goo, I don't know, name your RTS, and they probably tried to market to those people. Um, it's got Grey Goo mechanics
we,
now, I'm sure. Um,
we found the one Grey Goo player in the world at
and
one
poach
point.
him.
during this week, we actually found someone who unironically plays Grego.
Are they the Grey Goo goat?
Wait, did I not tell you?
No, I haven't heard this. I don't know who you're talking about.
In V-Fish, we found a guy that unironically has like hours of content on Grego. I'm not kidding. Like
I
it's
still haven't played
and
Grey Goo. Is it
it's,
actually legit? Is it good?
no, it's fucking dreadful. It's the worst RTS I've ever played. It's it's actually unbelievably bad. I know what are you talking about. Anyway, okay. Let's talk about Battle List. First off, I
Okay,
think you're
you
gonna
haven't been
rush.
enjoying it. I know you haven't been enjoying it. You haven't played it. I know, I know.
No. What the fuck are you talking about?
How
But
much
I
have
don't
you
have as
played? How
many
many
hours.
hours?
Okay, how many hours? Okay, it's been out for 4 days, 5 days.
Yeah.
How many hours do you think I have?
So 4 days. How many hours there in 4 days?
No, I think 5 or 6. 5 or 6
96.
days.
So let's say waking hours since it came out is not even gonna be like you can't have been awake for like 100 hours since the game came out. I think. So
Yeah.
I would guess 45, 50.
60. Technically 64, but 4 were from the previous alpha test. The one was not public.
Yep.
Okay, so let's introduce the game actually for people
Okay.
who don't know, because we're not to assume that everyone is on everyone's radar. So Battle Ace is the new fast action RTS. Don't try to acronymicize that fast action RTS because it doesn't end well. Um, by the by David Kim. It's not by David Kim. It's not one dude making the whole thing. David Kim is the lead designer of the project, so it has been known before the name got revealed, but as the David Kim RTS.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Uncapped Games, which is the company that actually makes the product, is a bit bigger than just David Kim. But so actually, fun fact: despite the fact that I played the first ever alpha of this game
Mm-hmm.
before anyone else, like I was already in from the start. The game did not have a name
Yeah,
at the time.
which was
It was
really
called. It
weird.
was just Uncapped Games game,
Yeah. So
with
some people are like,
Uncapped
oh,
Games being the company.
can you tell us what the game is even called? And you're like, no. And it's like, oh, because of the NDA. And it's like, no, because it
No,
doesn't
it
have a
doesn't.
name. It's like,
We don't even know. So we were playing the actual game, but we just called it the David Kim RTS because that's what officially. I don't know
yeah,
how big or small the dev team actually is.
sounds small.
Producer
Seems
probably
small.
saying one person per area, but I'm not so sure. I think certain areas
Yeah.
in the Q&A with
So
David Kim have
yeah.
one person,
So
but I don't think everything has one
the
person.
one person per area comes from the Q&A, like you're saying, where they were explaining that
Yeah.
some features will take longer to get into the game and need to be prioritized differently because there's only one person working on that feature. So like maybe
Yes.
chat is quite slow to get into the game because there's only one guy that's working on like the social side of things and like making lobbies and adding friends and chatting and that sort of thing. So yeah, there's like quite, I guess, they're economizing quite hard on in terms of what they're committing time to, which is I think is the right way to go about these sorts of things because obviously you don't want
Yeah.
to sink loads of money into absolutely nailing a clan system in a game that you need to get it to launch, you need to get players, and you need to get people actually interested in the game primarily first, for example. So I think that seems about the right way to go about it. I think it's not a small studio. They have backing from Tencent as far as I'm aware, maybe via
But
Riot
backing.
Games, but is that right?
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure about the backing. I'm fairly sure Tencent has the backing, but I'm not even sure if this is public information, but it's widely known. So hopefully we don't get copyright strike. Please, Chinese overlords, don't copyright strike
We're
us.
getting our best fact checker on it. I'm gonna ask if Lilybad can
yeah,
tap out from Grey Goo and
yeah,
Google it for us,
yeah. If nothing else, this whole section will be censored. Like you just hear me speak.
and
This will be the whole thing.
we don't mention anything square. No.
Okay,
Good. We've
so
gone work.
okay.
Good.
Yeah, let's actually talk about I think the main defining feature of this game. There are two of them in my opinion. I'll tell my two, and then you can choose whether or not you think those are appropriate or two.
Mm-hmm.
The first, I would use two words. Actually, it's technically three, but two key terms. One is fast. Fast as in the average game length is anywhere between 4 to 5 minutes at the
Okay,
moment.
I'm going to interrupt you. It's 45 minutes is gameplay time, but the game is hard capped at 10, right? So if you get
Yes.
to, is it if you get to 11 minutes, or is it if you get to 10
Yeah.
minutes, you get
If you
sudden
get
death?
to 10, if you get 10 minutes, you get 1 extra minute of sudden death. But sudden death doesn't exactly work as you think. It just basically means that there is a scoring system. The details of which, I'm gonna be honest, are a bit unclear. I've only had like I think 2 games ever out of hundreds go that far. I think it's just unit plus bases, and I don't know
I
exactly
think
how each
yeah,
unit and
I
each
think it's like
base is.
units killed, maybe.
I think
Yeah.
it's just cost of things alive
Okay.
is my guess. If I had to completely guess, my impression was because uh, like the numbers will change. Like for example, on one base, obviously, if it was one base versus one base situation, then obviously one unit would matter more towards the total score. Whether it's four base versus four base stall, one unit in the grand scheme of the score will change very little.
Mhm.
So it's a bit unclear. Producer Pub says unit skill plus amount mined. I genuinely don't know.
But it's
Uh,
one of those says it's something like cost of units left alive plus banked resources. Interesting. I think it's hard to tell, right? Because basically the way it works is there's like a bar at the top that shows like percentage. So it's like 54% versus 48%. But if you
yeah,
kill an opposing unit, your units killed count has gone up, so the bar shifts, but it's proportional. So their units alive count has gone down, so it shifts. So you can't really
Eh,
tell like which if one is losing numbers or the other is adding numbers. So it's hard because they would look the same in a proportional thing like that.
yeah. I
But
just push the
broadly,
proportion,
it's
but
score, which like I think people are pretty aware of because score is a thing you can see in like Age of Empires. It's a thing you can see in StarCraft. It's
yeah,
broadly
but
score.
it's infamously very inaccurate in those
Yeah.
games. So, but in this one, it seems to be fairly accurate. Every single game that I've had that went to that situation, I never felt like, oh, I feel like this person is actually slightly winning, but they have lower scores. So
Yeah.
I've never had this impression. So at least
So
this one seems to work fairly decently. But
like
that's not
you're like I'm
important.
winning this game and my score is higher, so this seems pretty
It
accurate.
seems to check out, yes.
Cool.
But even from the ones from other people that I've seen, like they look to me like they had more unit, and the score seemed to reflect that. Unlike StarCraft, where because of unit cost, race inequalities, and so on,
Yeah. So like
it's
you could
not
be a
as
Zerg
clear.
against a Terran playing mech, and you can mine out 8 of the 12 bases. But if you trade really poorly, like your score being much higher doesn't mean that you're actually winning the game. Kind of. Though I don't
Yeah.
know. That doesn't really work. Cause I guess your score is higher, but yeah.
So, but regardless of that, the core thing that I wanted to say before Art interrupted me with the stupid thing about the sudden death is that the game is quick. And it's not just a vague promise. The gameplay is actually quick. The average length of a game is indeed 4 to 5 minutes. Slightly less or slightly higher. I've seen mean if you're willing enough, you can end games in 45 seconds, which sounds terrible. So this is the first thing, and I was a bit skeptical. I'm gonna be honest, Art.
Mm-hmm.
In the first half, I felt very volatile. It was like, oh wow, the game lasts so little. It's like, oh, I make one mistake and I die.
Yeah,
You
and it
know,
snowballs and you're just dead in like 2 minutes.
yeah, I thought it was gonna be more like this, but my experience that the game is actually surprisingly forgiving at a very high level, which I am at the moment. I'm ranked in both 1v1 and 2v2 in the top 25 and probably much higher. In the 2v2 I was like second or third, and in
Mm-hmm.
1v1 I'm also think I'm like top 10 at the moment. It's hard because there are no official raidable. We get like snapshot every once in a blue moon. It's a bit weird. Regardless, I actually found out that the game is pretty enjoyable. As in, the fast pace doesn't necessarily translate into the kind of gameplay that we usually associate with short games in other RTS. For example, it doesn't necessarily think that people didn't take up fully. You can take up very quickly in this game. You can take up, in fact, from 0 seconds. Because you start with enough resource to either expand immediately or to take up, which is a choice. It has like some ramification. I'm not gonna go into the whole meta. Um, the way it works is that everything is automized. What do I mean by that? The game simplifies the macro element to speed itself up. In the sense that every unit gets built by the main base and it's as an instant build time. Every base is built with a press of a button. They always go in the same spots in order. You don't choose where it goes, and it spawns instantly. But it doesn't start mining instantly. It takes 60 seconds before the worker spawns. There are workers, actually, surprisingly.
But you
So
don't
when you think
control them.
about, but you don't control them. They basically stand still and they mine through, I don't know, absorbing the energy of the earth or something. It's not unclear. But the gist of it is that there are workers,
They're like solar
which
panels.
means, yeah, which means that if you do destroy, if you do kill those workers, your opponent economy is gonna be crippled until they
So
respawn.
you can still interact with the opponent's economy, but it's not like, it's not like they're microing workers. It's not like they're choosing to build
Yeah,
workers and that sort of thing. Yeah.
it's a bit in between, right? Between something like StarCraft and something like Zero Space, where Zero Space completely did away with workers, and so they had to choose other ways of creating a race, such as the harvesters or the small like mineral banks that each base had and stuff. Battle Aces has workers that can be killed, but they automatically respawn. You don't have to make them, and you don't control them. So it's another variation. Now, that being said, the games work, in my opinion, with the meta and stuff. The game works. As in, I was convinced that this game was was had such a big design flaws in this that it could never work. But having
You
actually
mean after the
tested it,
first alpha, like after playing just a few hours?
no, even the first alpha. The problem with the first alpha was that due to certain due to the way, like for example, certain units worked and there was no body worked. It was very similar to exactly that bad experience I was describing before. Basically, the one base cheese, the game's ending in 45 seconds. And like very frustrating experience. But even back then, I remember saying the game is fun. It's like quite interesting, quite fast paced. But I don't feel like it had a lot of depth. I'm not sure about the depth. I still think to this day that unfortunately the game doesn't have the depth of a standard RTS. But it has had some depths, and take this with a grain of salt. In the second key term that I wanted to break up, which is deck building. Oh boy, we have to talk about deck building.
Yeah, might need some explanation because this is pretty
Okay,
atypical as far as like RTS
yes.
goes. Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna make a comparison. This I was making this comparison before it was cool, but David Kim himself did it in the Q&A. So I don't think it's unfair to compare this game to Clash Royale. Now this is a bad comparison, to be clear, because Clash Royale is a game that's widely hated for a variety of reasons by serious gamers. But hold on your hesitation for a second before you immediately go, it's like Clash Royale fucking blows. 1 second. Let's talk about in what ways it is like Clash Royales, in what ways it could be like Clash Royale in the bad sense, and what we can do to avoid it. So, before the match start, in your own, like in the menu screen, you choose a deck loadout. The way this works is that there are, let me think about it. There are six kind of slot. There are 8 slots and 6 type of unit. There are 2 slots that can only be used by tier 1 units, 4 slots that can be used by tier 2 units. Well, actually, it's a bit more complicated, but the gist of it is, out of these 8 slots, 2 are locked by tier 1, and the other 6 are you have a bit more choice between if you want like 4 tier 3 and 2 tier 2s, or if you want 3 tier 3s and 3 tier 2s, and so on. So there is a bit more choice. And for each tier, you can choose a variety of unit. It sounds a bit complicated when I'm explaining it because I'm dumb and I don't know how to explain it properly. But it's much simpler. When you do it, you get it immediately. It's not.
Yeah. So it
It
just
doesn't
says
take.
pick the units that you want as your tier 1 choices. So you might say like Zergling and a Reaper is your tier 1 choices, and it says pick what you want for tier 2, and you might take Roaches and Stalkers, and it says pick what you want for tier 3, and you might take Mutas and Ultras or something, right? It's
Yeah,
broadly like there's types of units like you're saying, so they might be like air units or ground units for
yeah.
between tiers, but you just pick per tier so that you're like, yeah, that's your selection of units. Do you know how many units there are total, and are they planning on adding more?
There are at the moment, I think we counted the 40 something units,
Okay, that's really
and
nice.
maybe 43 total. It's a bit weird. I actually counted the exact number, but I forgot. David Kim has stated multiple times that he aims for the game to be around 50 units on release. And then from the QA, I gathered that each season, a season is gonna be a month and a half. Well, it might change. Everything is subject to change. We still have to see. They're gonna try to add 2 units. That would be around anywhere from 18 to 20 units per year, depending how exactly long the seasons are. For example, if the season are 1 month, then it's 24 and so on. But more like, I think around 20 units per year, 18, 20 units per year that are added. Now, I'm not sure if on the long term, but we're talking like after at least a couple of years,
Yeah,
they plan on adding stuff like rotations, as it's
yeah.
common in
So
games that have these kind of things.
yeah, because in 2 years you'll be looking at about 90 units, 100 units, which is kind of a lot for people to learn and like see regularly. I guess League is now near 200, if not over. I don't know much about it.
Yeah, and that creates problems, in my
Yeah,
opinion, because it's really hard to get into League nowadays because there's so much to learn. It's
yep,
overwhelming. You have to learn 20,000 different champions.
yep.
But so far, well, we'll see how that particular part goes.
But it's quite
So
a nice idea actually to have rotations in that when you're switching the types of units in and out, if you have a really meta defining unit and then you just get rid of it, you can, you know, form a whole
the
new
meta
meta
changes.
around,
Yeah,
yeah, you can shift everything around the new units that, yeah, that come
yeah.
up behind it.
This is more similar to, for example, card games.
Yeah, so
Hearthstone comes
Hearthstone
to
is, yeah,
mind,
famously, yeah.
or Magic the Gathering, the most famous with rotating formats, standard formats, formats that don't rotate. You have a bit of everything.
Hmm.
I always thought that the way Magic the Gathering did it was always really cool. But if you are familiar with it, you should know what we are talking about. Regardless, let's tackle the issue. Can an RTS work with deck building? And my honest answer to it is, oh, I don't know. I don't know because it's hard to tell. I'm gonna explain what I mean. There are now starting from the let's suppose that it's theoretically possible to have a good balanced RTS with deck building elements to it.
Hmm.
Definitely, regardless how possible it is, we have to. There are trap faults. There are faults that you can fall into, and there are a bunch of problems that need to be addressed. Right, like there are a bunch of very glaring issues. So, for example, one of my biggest pet peeves about the game, and I've talked about, I even asked David Kim myself with this voice, the only person who had the courage to actually use voice instead of writing questions in chat. Because I'm not a coward. I will ask him the hard hitting question. Um, One of my biggest pet peeves is that at the moment, the current state of the game, tier 1 units matter a lot, but not because of the reason you think, not necessarily because, oh wow, I start losing the tier 1 battle and then I just die immediately or stuff.
Hmm.
But because if you have a bad combination of tier 1 units, it becomes much harder, even if you get like a better hand on tier 2 on tier 3, to actually play in a proper manner. So you always fall into a defensive position. The game is much harder to play, and sometimes, I'm gonna be honest, it just feels like straight up bullshit.
Hmm.
You're like, wow, my opponent picked this unit, I picked these other units, his unit counters mine, I'm behind from the start.
Yeah.
Now, this is the question that I asked David Kim, and we're going to talk about the Q&A later, I think. But I will say, at least I will spoiler the answer to this question. So David Kim's solution, my proposed solution was to have slightly more slots for tier 1 unit. This way you could have at least 2 or like instead of 2, maybe 3 units,
Yeah.
and that should more or less cover all of your bases in the
Yeah,
sense
it
that
means you're more likely
no
to
ma
have a counter against more of the things that you're likely
not
to destroy.
necessarily a counter, but at least something that trades evenly, and the
Mhm.
composition at tier 1 can be a bit more complex, right? So instead of 1 unit spam, because the other one is anti-air, you have slightly more varied compositions, and this also makes scouting more important, because in this game there is almost no scouting. What do I mean by that? You have half a map pack. You don't actually have a map pack, but you do have a production hack.
Mhm.
Not exactly. What you can see is every time a base spawns from the enemy, you see it immediately. It just shows up on the map. It even makes a sound. You don't have to scout for a base. You just, the moment that your opponent presses the button, it appears on both screens. Same thing for tech. Every time you tech, you can press the button to show the unity decks in game. That will all not only show you which units are present in the deck, but also which one are available and which one are gonna be available in how long. There's like a rotating clock that will tell you, oh, your opponent is stacking, for example, to Foundry, so he's gonna have these units available when this clock turns completely. But scouting still gets you some information, specifically two things. One, the army movement of the opponent,
Mhm.
because obviously the map still has fog of war, so it's not. That's why I said it's alpha map pack. Which is actually very relevant because backstabbing, hitting mineral lines, and one shot and killing bases very quickly, like sniping bases, have all been strategical parts of the meta. So
Yeah,
it's not a secondary thing. It's actually a very important skill to have.
like we said
Splitting
earlier,
units
like
on the map.
you can still kill workers. Workers still die pretty quick. So like when you can backstab and wipe out a mineral line, you can get that
Insanely
having
ahead.
you can get really far ahead by having good like map awareness and knowing where your opponent movement is. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Uh, and that's so. As I've said, the other thing that scouting is useful for is that just because someone teched, you still don't know what units
Yeah,
they're
it doesn't mean
actually
they have to
building.
make those units. And I guess if they have 4 slots for tier 2,
Yeah,
let's say, there's an option of 4 unit types they could be making from
well,
those 4
technically
slots.
only two.
Okay.
Because there are two different tech paths, and you have
Okay.
three units per path. As I said, out of these 3 units, one is always tier 2, one is always tier 3, and then there's one that you can choose between tier 2 and tier 3.
Okay. Okay.
So we call them the ground path and the air path. It's not actually only ground and only air,
Yeah.
but for simplicity's sake, we'll call them the ground path and the air path. So they have 3 units each, but they could be making one of the other, or they could even be making tier 1 units because of reasons.
Mhm.
Anti-air, there are a bunch of things that could be happening, right?
Yeah.
So by adding one tier 1 slot, you would have this to be a more important part of the game, because now suddenly there's like 2 or 3 options for tier 1, and you kind of want to know what your opponent is going for
Yeah.
out of these options, so
You
you
can
can choose the most
yeah, you can
appropriate
start to get into
counter.
like not like a rock paper scissors because it's not like it's a hard counter. But if you're scouting and you're saying like, okay, they're building mostly rock, therefore I need to go home and build like mostly paper to try and
Yeah,
like prepare for and
exactly.
shift according to what they're building. Yeah.
So this was my proposed solution, and that's what I was wondering. David Kim disagreed. He thinks that by putting too many tier 1 units, I mean, his disagreement is fair.
Mhm.
He's afraid that the game will revolve too much about tier 1.
Yeah, that would be
Uh,
my like first thought as well. It's like maybe
and so
put
it's
too
gonna
much
become,
emphasis on staying low tier. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, and then it becomes Olin and Snowball again. That's a take. I'm not sure if that's true or not. It could be
Mhm.
balanced, I guess. His proposed solution was to make every tier unit like without any hard counters.
Mhm.
As in the tier units give you a very slight edge. They
Yeah.
still have the unique features. Every tier unit is tier 1 units, and there are a bunch of them. I think there are like 16.
Mhm.
Uh, they're all pretty decent unique.
Yeah.
You know, they're not completely unique. A lot of them are similitude. The Scorpion is pretty similar to the Crab. You have Blink Hunters and Blink for like the same unit, but anti-air or anti-ground.
Yeah. Yeah.
There are a bunch of things that can be a bit more complex in that sense. But regardless, the gist of it is that you have the option of going for any tier 1, and you should never be like auto
Yeah.
lose tier 1. Basically,
So
that's the idea.
kind of what I'm thinking on that line is like Reapers against slowlings are obviously really good. Reapers against speedlings are obviously really bad. But it's so, and like an early game zealot is not very strong, but later on zealots get better. So you can kind of like balance around having differences between units, but not having any single unit being objectively better or worse. And
Yeah.
you know they have different use cases. I think people will make arguments and they'll say, "No, lings are overpowered," but like I don't know. You can see my point there. Is like there needs to be some level of interaction among units that isn't just a hard win one way or the other. And I don't necessarily know how that kind of works in this game because I don't know how that works in this game because as far as I understand, there aren't upgrades like that. So it's not like lings are bad and then you get ling speed and now they're good. There aren't upgrades in that way. So it's not like that
Well,
unit kind of shifts over
the
time.
way you can think about it is that by virtue of the way a unit works, they might or not or might not pick up value over time. For example, theoretically speaking, the crab should be a pretty decent unit at the start, right? Like they are pretty bulky, they have high damage, high HP, they are melee and pretty fast.
Cool.
But they don't scale because they're
Yeah.
melee, right? So in a choke, for example, the opponent, I have a million crab, my opponent has a million recall, which are range units. They are called recall, yes. I am gonna point out, David Kim, if you ever this gets word to you, come on, man, you can find better names, okay? Half of the units in this game are called like blink because they blink, recall because they recall. Like, come on, bro. Like, come on, a bit.
Counterpoint. I don't hate it. I think everyone's gonna call them something anyway. I mean, we saw with Stormgate they were called like Therium and Luminite, but everyone just says minerals and gas because it's they were gonna call them something anyway, right? Like they're called Exos, but people say Marines all the time.
Yeah, but then you read a description that is the following. I'm not kidding. Air anti-air airship. That's the name of the unit. The name of the unit is airship, and this classification is air anti-air. It's
Yeah,
a flying unit that counters other flying units.
it's a
It's essentially
Phoenix.
a
I get it.
corruptor
Yeah.
or a phoenix, a corruptor or a phoenix. But you hear that you're like air anti-air airship. You're like, what the hell is this?
But on the other hand,
So
the Phoenix I think says like air superiority fighter, and you're like, the fuck are you talking about? I don't know. Yeah, I take your
okay.
point, but I don't hate it. I think if it in the UK we say it does what it says on the tin. If it says blink, it does what it says on the tin. It blinks. If it says recall, it
It
recalls.
does blink.
So I think
It does blink.
but when we're talking about like League of Legends, and I say to someone who's never played League before, Briar, what do you think Briar does? They're gonna be like, no
I
idea,
don't
right?
know.
It turns out they destroy your life. But
Yes.
if I say, oh,
The,
recall, what do you think recall does? They're gonna be
they
like,
also
it
they also
recalls.
I'm pretty sure that buyers also severely increased the amount of money into the pocket of certain artists. There is a direct correlation there. I'm fairly sure about that. Someone made bank out of Briar. Anyway, as yeah, that's kind of the problem, right? That we are talking about. Um, shut up. Okay, sorry. Producer pad that cut. Okay, so this is in theory. Now let's talk about the actual downsides of it. Like, let's talk about the actual problems with the deck building. I'm sorry, David Kim, but I'm not so convinced that this can actually work. Right now, it feels like a lot of units. Like the way this game works is when you have fun, you have fun. It's a blast. It's really fun. I played a lot of it. Okay, but there are games where you're playing against certain units and you have certain other units where those it feels like it's some of the most unfun gameplay experience I've ever had. Certain units, especially the backstab part of it, are so frustrating to play with. I'm infamous. If you look at my Twitch, there are like 1,000 clips just titled Wasp or Wasp Rant. The Wasp is the most annoying unit in the game. It's the fastest. It's basically a Ling, except it doesn't trade poorly. So the whole point of like normal, normal game design is that a fast unit, by virtue of being fast and thus choosing
Has
how
to be
to take,
squishy. Yeah.
it has to be either squishy, which is the Wasp is squishy, but it has to trade inefficiently. Lings don't win against Marines until Adrenal, and even with Adrenal, actually, they don't
With
win
a
if
good
Marines
fight,
have
they
sneak
don't. Yeah, unless you're getting a
Yeah,
really good surround, and even then, Baneling is
exactly.
what does it? Yeah.
Yeah, the Banelings are the things, right? So links, they don't kill marine, they don't kill stalkers, they don't even the things that counter, they only kind of soft counter. And they work really well, and the links are incredibly strong. They're really, really strong. They're one of the things that makes Zerg Zerg, right? But when if you have a link that also trades well, then you have a problem. Because not only and yeah, it still has the same weakness as every other link. It still dies to AoE, but you can just not. You can always choose where and when to take fights. You can always backstab. You can always run around in circles around armies. They
Yeah.
can do anything
When you
about
have
it. There
a
is no way
speed
to catch
advantage
them.
like that, yeah, you can kite slower, clunkier units like that, I guess. It's why, like, if someone's no one would really say like disruptors counter lings, right? That's not really like a.
Yeah,
That's not why you make disruptors.
but even for example, in situation like I don't know, links against tanks, for example, like links are actually insanely good against tanks. Because of the speed and the fact that they can get on top, and because of how armor typing works in StarCraft and so on. Despite
And
that,
self splash and that sort of thing. Yeah.
and self splash and so on, right? Because those units work in such a way, it's not necessarily the case that every area of effect unit actually counter wasps, and they are by far my most hated people. I think people cope about it. They abuse them to get to a certain rating, and then they pretend they're not good, despite the fact that almost every top player plays them. And yeah, sure, you can see like someone like Parting and Clampling purely blink. Have insane macro. I'm not denying that it's possible. In fact, I've won against many Wasp player myself, never using Wasp. But that's not really what I'm talking about, right? So that's kind of
So this is
the
a conversation we've had so many times and will probably continue to have. A unit needs
yeah.
to be interesting and fun as well as balanced, right? And it
I mean, it can
sounds
never be
like they're
fully fun.
just yeah, yeah, because
Most
it's
units that
not
are
fun
fun
to
for one
lose.
player,
Yeah,
most units that are fun for one player are usually not fun for the other. But there is a limit to this, right?
yeah,
Like there are units that are just so unbelievably unfun, and they can be even boring for both players. A
yeah.
good example is the carrier. I don't even think that Skytos players enjoy carriers. 'Cause they are not
They
very
like
fun.
the
They enjoy
MMR and they like
winning,
winning, but
yeah.
yeah,
They like winning, they like the MMR, but it's not like you play carries and like, wow, I'm carrying so well. I've seen someone like a Ling or a Stalker, for example, something that's a high man
yeah,
ability, has way better ways of giving yourself that feeling of
yeah.
satisfaction. Was for somewhere in between, in the sense that they're really fast, they can do the surround, you feel really cool. But also, I think it's slightly cheaper by just how good it is. You don't need a good
Hmm.
surround. You don't need to be in position. You don't need to pay too much attention
Yeah.
because the wasps are just so
It's like
good.
when people clip something and put it on Reddit and they're like, "Look how sick this clip is," and it's like, "Yeah, you could have just A moved. I think you always win that fight." Like,
Yeah,
yeah, I look at this sick nuke I hit. It's like, yeah, but the Protoss has 120 supply. You could have just A moved him with your max mech army, and he
much
probably would
out.
have died too. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, but as long as those things are at least fun,
yeah.
I can see something right now. I will say something to David's game credit. In the previous, there was already a patch
Hmm. Yeah, yeah.
for
Really
this
quick
game.
turnaround on that. It was
And
like
what
the second or
really
third day.
interested
Yeah,
me was the fact that this patch was, in my opinion, so either David Kim got it very wrong, or more likely, this patch wasn't exactly aimed at Clem Trigger and Parting.
hmm,
Because what it did wasn't necessarily only units. Some units were like gigamate and super broken, sure. But those were like so very obvious. Stuff like the Beetle was completely out of control, and the Mortar was pretty problematic too. But the thing that interested me was stuff like the nerf to the Raider. The Raider was never meta.
hmm.
But it was by far the most unfun unit to play against in the entire game. The Raider is a unit that cannot attack other units. The only thing it can attack is Worker. Was super fast,
Okay.
quite tanky, and wiped the mineral lines in seconds.
Yeah. So if you look away and you're not in position, you just lose a
No,
mineral
no,
line.
but
And yeah,
even if you are in position, every time it will just run by. It can attack while moving. It will just like wipe your mineral line.
yeah,
And if you didn't have enough DPS, so for example, if you had melee units that were slower, or
yeah.
even units that were ranged but didn't have enough DPS to one shot, it will
Hmm.
just run past and kill two mineral lines. It was incredibly annoying.
Hmm.
It wasn't meta because at the top level you could have that vision control, you could have a mortar
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
There were
You'd see
so
it
many
coming
ways,
and
and
leave the
also
fight.
it would waste a foundry slot, so it will just die to pushes. Like, it was never actually completely made or anything like that, not even close to it.
Yeah.
But it still was severely nerfed because it's just how unfun it was for the average player experience. So I am glad that there are steps thinking not only about the super top level game balance, but also about some units that might not work so well, right? So maybe the Raider wasn't such a great idea. Now at the moment it's kind of unplayable. Maybe we can get it to a state where it's decently playable but not as frustrating, or maybe we can rework it. There's a bunch of stuff
Yeah.
that can be done. But regardless of that, at least I see some willingness to nerf it. Now, this is my interpretation of the fact.
Okay,
I
okay.
really hope that David Kim didn't think that all of those units were the meta, because they weren't. Some
Well,
of them were.
it's possible they have data on unit usage and they see them perhaps in times when
Yeah,
you
but
don't.
was the most unit, the most high,
Yeah.
the most used unit at the high level, and it never got even close to a nerf. Fun fact, was part to be nerfed at least once, if I recall correctly, in the alpha test for exactly the same reason. And I feel like they reverted the nerfs or something. It was basically exactly the same problem. They would just outtrade way too well. And there was no reason to do anything but Wasp. At the time, I even played them. Now, I've had things say like, oh, Wasp are not actually broken. You just have to learn how to play them and
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
Now, I won't comment on whether or not Wasp are broken or not, because I think you have to be a bit disingenuous to think that they're not broken when every good player uses them. Like, if you see a unit in 90% of the games above a certain MMR, I don't think you can reasonably make an argument that the unit is at the very least not meta-defining.
Yeah.
Now, if you want to
If it
call
wasn't at
meta-defining,
least good, they wouldn't be picking it. They just ignore
yeah,
it.
yeah, like the fact that the same people who play Wasp tell me Wasp is terrible begs the question: why do you keep spamming Wasp? Now, there are people like Bonan or myself. Bonan is the most shadow of all of them, I'm gonna be honest, who self-imposed restriction on the deck. I don't like to play I don't like to play Wasps. I don't like to play Stingers. I don't like to play Vulcans. For all of those, are they called Vulcans? No, they're not called Vulcans, right? They're
Vulcans
called
is the
the
Stonegate thing, but
Yes, they're called Falcons.
oh.
Sorry. Uh, Reasoning is because I don't like the design of those units. I don't have fun when I play them. I think they're really unfun for me and my opponent. I think they create very problematic situation. The Falcon as a whole, like Trigger keeps talking about how broken the Falcon is, despite the fact that the reason why it's broken is such a meta thing, where it's broken because if you
It
have it in your
beats.
deck,
Yeah.
no, it doesn't even beat anything straight up. The problem is that it basically locks your opponent out of certain choices. Like, if your opponent has a Falcon, then you can never tech in a certain way. You can never tech Foundry unless you are specifically Heavy Hunter, because otherwise you just instantly lose. So you are forced to play a very specific kind of way. It's basically a unit that just by virtue of existing in your deck, not even teching to it. Just having it to your deck locks your opponent out of certain options, which I think is a really bad spot.
Yeah.
For it. Wasp, I explained why I don't like them. The Stinger is more of the same reasoning as the Wasp. I don't think it's as broken. I think it's actually quite a bit on the weaker side. I just don't like the way the gameplay works. So I don't use them. Bonan is even higher on himself. He just plays the basic standard deck, the one that you're given at the start, and nothing else. And he still got very high rating. So skill definitely matters because more than unit selection.
Yeah.
To a certain point, though.
Yeah. You're
Because
gonna
when I
get
play
stuck
against,
if you're only playing like the basic deck and you're just gonna
yeah,
lose. In what you're saying is a really irritating way because you show up and you lose, not because you were outplayed, but because your units maybe aren't necessarily just worse, but they are countered by the meta picks, which is always kind of
yes.
the way with a meta. Whenever a meta develops, that is kind of
Well,
always the way.
that's kind of the thing with deck builds, right? So you have to
Yeah.
play with the meta, slightly below the meta, since I play a tier 2 deck or an anti-meta deck.
Yeah.
That's more or less how it works, right? So an anti-meta deck is the deck that's not good. The only purpose of the anti-meta deck is to beat a meta deck.
Yeah.
And depending on the percentage, there can be like various levels.
Yeah.
Like, if you ever watch history of tournaments in games that have decks, like actual physical decks of cards. Once again, I'm thinking about Magic the Gathering or Yu-Gi-Oh! For those who like do Yu-Gi-Oh! Sure, I also follow that. You see stuff like the Summer of Hulk what the fuck is the name? Or Eldrazi Winter. You don't know what those words mean, Hart, but
No,
they
I have
were
no
meta
idea.
so dominating, where certain decks were so meta defining that basically even the anti-meta decks struggled against the meta decks. And you would just see go at the tournament and like 60% of the decks in a tournament were just Eldrazi, some variation of Eldrazi,
Yeah.
or some variation of Ogak. Or Oak, or whatever your favorite broken unit that got instantly banned the moment got figured out is. Regardless of that, that's once again the problem with this game, right? This is the weakness of the unit deck. And this is why I'm about to say something more controversial. I actually had more fun and more success playing 2v2.
Mhm. Yeah.
This is quite weird because I don't like team games, especially in RTS. I don't never take them seriously. I don't like them in StarCraft. I don't like them in Stormgate. I don't like them in Zero Space. I mean, wait, can you even play 2v2 in Stormgate? No, you can't.
Stormgate, yeah.
Uh,
Oh no, well, you
uh,
can play co-op, but not. Yeah, yeah.
you play
Not
co-op,
2v2.
not 2v2.
Yeah.
Zero Space does have a 2v2 mode, for example. I never play any of those. I'm not interested. I don't like them. They don't tickle the same. They don't scratch the same itch for me.
Yeah.
But for battle aces, I think it's quite interesting. Why? Because the simplicity that I was talking about, the fact that everything is simplified, the macro is very easy, the decisions are instant and quite like you don't really have to macro at all. A lot of that lost complexity is a bit recouped in 2v2,
Yeah.
where you can build two decks, and now once you have two decks, you can
Yeah.
actually severely. That's why the thing I was like, I
And
wanted
then
more
you're
tier one.
coordinating and arranging with
Yeah,
your partner, like, okay, well, they're going to play this, so I'm going to counter one of the opponents and you're going to counter the other one. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And then we are like, okay, how do we want to make our comp?
Yeah.
How does this perform against several tiles? Like, for example, if our opponents are playing Massair, does at least one of us have a very good counter to
Yeah.
Massair? Just one that by itself, maybe with a little support from the other player,
Yeah.
you are able to at least decently defend the Massair. You have to make consideration like this. One of the things that I don't like so much in 2v2 is the fact that the map is exactly the same. They've introduced a system where you can basically have two
You
bases
share a
instead of
base.
one.
Yeah.
You share a base. It works well. So like
Yeah.
the
Yeah. Yeah.
sharing
It
works
seems okay.
perfectly. Even the harass share, like even the harass is split, so you can harass one player compared to the other because the mineral lands are like splitting colors and
Yeah.
shit. But the map is very claustrophobic. And with one player, you already kind of feel there's like not too much. Like the maps are very small. The
Yeah.
single map is very small. There's not that
So
much space and not much
when you put basically
interesting
twice as
points.
many units on it, it gets really crowded.
Very claustrophobic. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. But strategically speaking, because the fact that it solves so many of the problem of the tier 1 counter picks, the tier 2 counter picks, oh my god, my opponent well Falcon, I went Foundry, I'm instantly dead,
Mhm.
stuff like that, I found 2v2 to be a more interesting experience,
Yeah.
even though I played 1v1 just as much, if not more.
Yeah.
In fact, I was the only player, I will tell you, when they published the ladders, I was the only player that was in both ladders.
Nice.
Now this is not longer the case because, for example, players like Theory and Albino that
Yeah.
were really good at 2v2 have started playing 1v1. They also immediately skyrocket because those are really good players. And I'm sure there are other people that I'm forgetting about. But the point is, I played both games more or less equally.
Yeah.
So
I prefer
my
2v2, which, as you
I
say, is
prefer.
surprising compared to like how much you like StarCraft 2v2. My
Funny enough, this was also
question.
the case with Boss. To be
Yeah. Yeah.
Boss
Yeah.
hates 1v1. He likes 2v2 a lot, but I think 1v1 is has a
Yeah.
lot
It's
of
not a big fan.
problems.
So my question
Yeah.
is, you're talking about units that you dislike. Do you think these units are fundamentally broken mechanically? Do you think they can be fixed with like simple stat changes, like make them slower, make them squishier, lower their damage, for example? And thirdly, do you think that means that the core concept of a deck building RTS is broken, and is it inherently broken?
So let's tackle those questions one by one, right?
Yeah.
Do I think that they are design broken? It depends on the units.
Mm-hmm.
Some units I really don't like design wise. The Raider being an example, right? Doesn't attack anything. The whole purpose is to sneak behind the enemy lines and
Yeah, yeah,
deal. Maybe it's really fun to use. In this nerf version I've heard it's not really fun.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
It feels absolutely dreadful. I'm not sure I like it. But other than the Raider, which really, really dislike the actual design of, as in
Yeah. You don't
I'm
think
not
it should be
sure.
in the game in any way.
Yeah. That and maybe the Falcon are the two units whose design I
Yeah.
find really sus. The Falcon basically is a air anti-ground unit.
Hmm.
But the problem with the Falcon is that because it's a air anti-ground unit and it's tier 2, anytime your opponent and tier 1 anti-air is quite bad.
Yeah.
If your opponent ever takes to
They
Foundry,
tech faster than you and then rush them out.
no, you don't rush. You basically never tech. You wait until your opponent techs, and your opponent can only pick air tech. Because if they ever pick ground tech, unless they have a very specific unit called Heavy
Hmm.
Hunter, you just make Falcons and instantly. You take air, like you just match the tech with the hair and you instantly win because the Falcon is so shuts down that completely.
Right.
The tech switches are very slow because once you select a tech path, you have to wait for it to fully complete before you can
Before you can
select
choose a
either
new one.
the next tier or the.
So
Well, you can have multiple tech paths at the same time. You can go ground and air at the same time, but for each of them you have to research it, and it costs 400,
yeah.
and you have to wait 60 seconds. You cannot do more than one at once. So if I'm taking ground, my opponent takes air, and I need an anti-air, I can't just tech to air
Yeah.
myself immediately
So
after. That's
it's
the problem with
so
it.
for example, Terran, you could be making Banshees and researching the cloak upgrade. You just cancel the cloak upgrade, lift the starport off of the tech lab, and switch something else on. You're saying it's like if you're stuck waiting for the research to finish all the way to the end, and then you do something else and choose a different path.
Yeah, that was
It's relatively restricted in that way.
that doesn't usually create too many problems.
Mm-hmm.
I think it specifically creates a game of chicken, as in you don't never want to tech because you're afraid that your opponent is gonna
Yeah,
counter tech
because they
immediately
just
after you.
I see.
With specific units.
Yeah,
The Falcon was one of them,
yeah.
basically.
So
There was a
yeah, I see
yeah.
what you mean. So it's basically a trap, and if they wait and see which one you pick, and then they can pick based on that. But that means that you're incentivizing people to just sit and wait and not actually pick a tech until the other person
Yeah,
picks one.
and once again, the problem will be that we ideally want the two tech paths. Even if you get
Mm-hmm.
counter, you should have some other advantage. So maybe I picked ground and you picked air.
Yeah,
That doesn't mean I just instantly lose because
yeah,
you picked air after ground. It means that basically I have, for example, to be very aggressive to push the advantage on the ground, or it means that you as the air player have to go around sniping bases or sniping workers, or you
yeah,
have to use the superiority, the fact that you have more mobile units that require specific counters and stuff, right?
yeah,
The Falcon, in my opinion, is a unit that shuts down a lot of that. There are other things, the other units whose design I think is fine, fine-ish, but I think they're just overstated.
yeah,
The Beetle, for example, I do not have a problem. I did not have a problem with the Beetle itself. I think it's fine design, even though it is similar to a Cyclone, which is always kind of sketchy design.
mm-hmm.
But it worked fine as far as the unit. It didn't feel too frustrating because they were a faster unit and good surround. It was just too bad, like too good. Sorry. It was the best anti-air and the best anti-ground, and it was like tier 1. It was insane.
yeah,
The Wasp has a similar problem. I think the Wasp is a very oppressive. Maybe at a super top level you can play Blinkana
yeah.
against
Like
it,
out micro
and
it.
but if like it's always possible to beat if you're skilled enough. That's always the case, right?
Yeah,
But just like in StarCraft, there are build order, we call them build order losses or build order disadvantage.
mm-hmm.
So is there in battle aces. And
Yeah,
with the Wasp specifically, it feels so frustrating because when you're playing as Wasp, you cannot move out of your base at all. The moment you ever move out, the Wasp players just runs in and kills all of your workers.
yeah,
And you cannot go back in time because all of his units are giga fast
yeah,
and also deal a fair amount of damage to workers if you get the surrounds. And they also trade well with your units. Because, for example, if you say, okay, I'm just gonna death push, the guy's gonna
yeah. You
basically
can
come with a
wipe
million
your mineral
workers.
line and then surround from behind with
Yeah,
some units.
surround or cut off your reinforcement or counter attack even more. There's so many options.
Mm-hmm.
The strength of the Wasp should be its versatility, not its stats.
Yeah,
It should compete stat wise with other tier 1 units because it's
yeah,
so much faster. Yeah, and by the time your units walk across, they will have 400, 500 inches of unit extra waiting because of defender advantages. So counter-attacking is really strong because your units have to rally all the way across the map, while
Yeah.
his units are really quick and can reinforce immediately. And if you're attacking, he even gets them immediately because you're attacking into the unit
Yeah, where
spawning.
the rally is. Yeah.
Yeah, where the rally is. So that's my take on it. I've gotten some backlash for this. People meme me about it.
Well, so it
It
sounds like the wasps you can just fix the stats and they'll be fine units, and then it sounds like
other
some
than
of the
that,
others you think don't really fit
it could be
into the
the
game.
it could be the yeah. Some of them, like for example, the Falcon, I really don't think I don't like it at all. And the Raider, it's not like it doesn't fit in the game; it fits perfectly. It's just a unit that is like irrelevant at the top level and incredibly frustrating for someone that's new in the game. I don't think
Yeah.
those are interaction that you want to have in your
Yeah,
game,
for sure.
especially because so many other things were adjusted to make the experience for new players
Yeah.
very forgiving and as enjoyable as possible.
Yeah. And you're
Um,
de-emphasizing like the macro, so you're definitely going for a kind of a group of people who aren't maybe like super RTS veterans. They're not like all about the uh, you know, map awareness and watching the mini map and thinking and planning ahead about like what their opponent might send their way and that sort of thing. So then to get a moved by a raider, lose your whole mineral line probably doesn't feel great.
Yeah, absolutely. That's kind of the problem. Of course, there are always counter to counter as always. I feel like I have to say this a million times. That just because a unit is objectively overpowered or better than
Yeah,
than other units, it doesn't mean that you can never win against it.
yeah,
I'm not implying that the only reason why I lost is because the unit is overpowered, but it definitely adds to the frustration.
yeah.
It doesn't
And
feel nice.
I think
And
the
I
thing that we kind of
also
already
read,
said is that like
yeah.
it forces the meta to go a certain way and it forces people to like if you're not playing that oppressive unit, you have to start playing an anti-meta unit to counter it, and
Yeah,
your it feels like your options are therefore more limited away from just like, oh, I want to play this unit, so I'm going to make this unit, I'm going to play that, we're going to play what I want to. It's like I'm forced to respond to the oppressive unit, you know?
yeah, and it feels like when the whole meta is dominated by fast units that they just
Yeah,
backstab, it can feel very frustrating to lose to them.
yeah,
That's
for
all.
sure.
See, I always get some slack every time I say like this is imba or this is imba or that is imba. But honestly, you're like, wow, no, you're just a molder, you're just a winner. But I have a simple question to ask for you, right? Because I'm genuinely confused by this. Do you genuinely think that people make an RTS in alpha or beta and they get the balance right the first time? Do you actually unironically
It's
believe this?
really funny because
Like, if people thought like this,
because
like,
it's so
it's so
obviously
weird
not
because this is
true, because
specifically,
they've already done a patch, they've already fixed the balance on a bunch of things, they already knew that they
yeah,
like a bunch
exactly.
of things would have to change. All you're
But the
saying is
other
like
things is,
there's one more that you'd missed, there's one more thing
yeah,
that you need to add to that list. Yeah,
but this is so weird to me because I swear that the RTS are the only genre of game where this happen. In League of Legends, like so many people, like it's actually ridiculous how many people in the community agree about champion, including mains of the champions, and they are angry against Riot because very often Riot balances around pro play instead of solo queue, for example,
yeah, yeah,
and they are
yeah.
sometimes completely
So
devoid
it's like if
of
you're a
things.
bronze, you're getting absolutely a moved by Master Yi. Master Yi is never picked in LCS or
Diamond.
whatever. Yeah,
And then everyone, even the top level, will tell you, oh yeah, Master is a bad champion, but it's like super frustrating and probably couldn't. Like they will never fucking cope about it.
yeah,
Oh, get good. You lost to Master E Omega, lol. And lol is one of the most toxic game on the planet.
yeah.
It's so weird to me how the standard for RTS has to be at the same time. Everything you say about balance is balance wine, but we also want patches. Mate, if the game is balanced, it doesn't need any patches. Or to keep the game fresh. That's bullshit. We all know it. Games don't get balanced because to keep the game fresh. They get
So
balanced because units are weaker, others are stronger, and the meta develops. Sometimes units are fine, and then something else, like a new way to use them, gets discovered, or the meta evolves, so the players become better, and they go from fine to completely broken, even without getting buffed.
yeah, I think it comes from brood war mentality ultimately, where people are saying that you just need to get good. And it's like there's a strong. I think this was always around in Brood War, even when it was like relatively new. Obviously, for a long time, it's been unsupported, kind of by Blizzard. And they were like, "That's it. The balance isn't changing." So people kind of needed if they wanted to keep playing Brood War at least, to optimize from the units that they had instead of saying, actually, can you just make Marines do 1 less damage? It would make the game way better. They're just saying, like, okay, here's how you have to optimize and play the game in order to make Terran worse. And I think, obviously a big part of that came from maps. Yeah, producer Pad just said. And they, like, deliberately designed maps that would be worse for certain races just to, like, spot nerf those. Those
Mostly
races.
flash.
Mostly
They have
anti-flash
to
maps,
nerf
as far as I'm aware.
anti-flash map, yeah.
But we see that in StarCraft as well, where it's like, I think the current map pool is very anti-Zerg and, like, deliberately.
I feel like every map pool is anti-Zerg in the last 2 years. I'm gonna be honest. No, but jokes aside, it's so weird to me that people have this mentality and they say, like, oh, well, you didn't lose because of imbalance. You lost because you could have done this and that better. And Arstem has a whole series about it called Easy Team or Do I Suck? And I love Arstem. If he ever watches this, I love you. And I like this series. I get the point of the series. It's tongue
really
and
like
cheek.
it.
I don't like watching it.
Do you know?
The reasoning because some episodes are hilarious. Like some people are completely coping or they write like their fucking fun stuff.
If they're
And
like
I think those are the
3.8K and they send it in and they're like, is it in
yeah,
range?
like
And you're like, you've got 3 idle probes, bro. Come on, be real.
yeah. Like it's hilarious to me. But I never stopped to think about the fact that maybe just because something is balanced at a level doesn't mean that it's not actually genuinely in at another. That it maybe does really take less skill or less time to invest into playing a certain strategy or a certain style up to a certain level. I'm a Zerg player. Zerg rushes are in at lower levels. It's so fucking easy to fucking like I don't know 12 pull
you
Ling.
can farm wins with 12 pull. Yeah, absolutely.
You can get fucking diamond so easily with it, for example.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that Ling rushes are OP at the top level. God knows, I wish they were. But to me, this mentality of always making fun of the bad player, complaining about balance because obviously it's not you stupid. It's not in balance. Don't you see the pro players? But that's not the average experience. It's just a weird way to explain it. And I also don't believe that the two cannot be balanced at the same time. I don't buy the whole thing. Well, they have to balance about pro players because they balance around the bronze. Of course, the pro player would be as if they are mutually exclusive. As if you couldn't nerf strategies that are really, really annoying in certain leagues.
Ways you can spot nerf and spot buff with a MMR range in mind. So you're like, there's a really obvious one, the carrier change. High-level players were never not A-clicking a carrier, and it's still better to A-click and target fire carriers so that you're
actually, in fact, the carrier change. The carrier change was like no, but Frank, this is perfect. The carrier change is a buff to carriers at pro level. Reasoning being that it made Queen Walls weaker against carriers. Now carriers still not viable. You just don't rush carriers at the pro level. Thank God. So it wasn't that. But by all meaning, there was no one at the pro level who was moving corruptors. That's not that sort of thing happened. The only thing that they did was that now carriers fuck with Hydras and any anti-ground.
Spores and Queens, basically.
Fighting way more. Spores, Queens, and stuff. And it's way easier for the carrier player to abuse that to get advantage. That's the only thing but at the bottom level, now suddenly where people don't have as many carriers, so they don't get upgrades, or they don't kite them well. Well, now you can like play a mass side and actually kill carriers. Right? Even though I think
the corruptors through, they hit the unit, they hit the carrier instead of shooting interceptors and
now Corruptor. Because at the time it was like always, go Hydra so you kill the interceptors, and now Hydras are worse even at the bottom level. But now you can actually unironically say go Corruptor, and you don't need to do a pro. You don't need to control the Corruptor so hard and stuff. It's weird to me that you cannot have discussions about units while being passionate. Otherwise, you get labeled a balance winner. Like if I say I think this unit is bullshit and I hate playing against it and I rage about it, you're a balance winner. But why? Can't we have a discussion? You can say, I think you're wrong. I think the unit is not overpowered because of this. No, there is never that discussion. We never talk about that. All we say is balance winner. We make fun of those people because they're balance winners. But we never actually interact with their argument. Like there are people that are incredible balance winner that are completely wrong. It's not like every balance winner is winner is right. Actually, most of them are wrong, and everyone knows this. But why is the standard completely ignoring the argument and just saying, "Oh, you're a balance winner, Omega lol," and not just saying, "No, you're wrong because of this," or "You're wrong because of that," or this, or engaging
So
with the actual
I
argument.
think that's where the value of is it Imber or do I suck lies, and that people that are sending those in, at least are open-minded to being told, no, you suck. And it's a nice way for people to say, what they're really saying is not like Marines are overpowered. They're saying, I'm really struggling with this kind of thing that I see
Yeah,
a lot on ladder. And then Harsam go and say, well, this is why, and you're missing this macro, and you're playing
yeah.
roaches
Okay,
against Mass
that's
Marine.
what
You're not
that's the
playing
part that I
Langball.
like.
So he's not saying like, but I think the problem lies when people assume that someone has tried nothing and are just wanting to take the easy way out by saying, no, this is
But
overpowered. I'm right. This is
The,
Imber.
the reason about the content is not that I think Arstem is unnecessarily mean, because
Yeah,
I
no,
don't
no,
think
yeah,
Arstem is mean. I think it's like he makes up jokes but he basically gives free coaching.
yeah.
Like he makes a bunch of puns with the title and stuff. But have you ever seen, for example, the comments under under those?
I don't read YouTube comments. I'm
Because
still not an idiot.
but I have. And I've seen how, like, the problem is not that with the content itself, as in, I think Arsem is doing something bad because he's making fun. No, Arsem, please, I love you. You know that. I'm not accusing you of anything like that because it's wrong. I don't think you are making fun of them. I think you give them free coaching. It's a nice thing, whatever. But it does shift the like, especially the YouTube comments. Does shift the perception
Mhm.
in this masochistic tendency of get good, get good, get good,
Yeah.
get good, get good, get good, which was like stuff that ruined. Like it reminds me of the Dark Souls debacle, where Elden Ring was quote unquote made easier by introducing quality of life changes, and people were as mad about it. Completely as mad, and there was like no discussion ever to be had about the fact. No. I love Dark Souls. It's one of my favorite games, the original one. Is it well balanced? God, no. Or like people like stuff like
But
this fucking weird
the
elitism.
the obvious one again is Brood War, where people are like, you actually don't need to select more than 12 units, and it's actually good that the pathing is bad. It's actually better if you have to spend like 45 APM to get a unit to go up a ramp properly, and also you need to do that for all of your control groups because you can select 12 units at a time. It's like, no, we can just have infinite selection and things should just work. I think it's often this like thought of like fighting the game versus fighting the opponent.
Yeah, but here I'm not talking about fighting the game. Okay, I'm not discussing game mechanics and stuff.
Yeah.
I'm specifically referring to balance, right? I'm specifically referring, for example, another controversial opinion that I have is that I don't think there is anything wrong. Well, in races that in games that have different factions or races,
Mhm.
I don't think there's anything wrong with having one race being slightly easier or even much easier is a bit of a sketch, but slightly easier than the other. I don't
Mhm.
need every faction needs to be as easy to pick up. I don't think the same. I don't need every faction needs to be as complex.
Mhm.
I think all of those can be managed. This is a controversial opinion because it's so easy to talk about Protoss in StarCraft, for example, and people saying over and over again how easy it is, and we never discuss ways of making Protoss more interesting.
Yeah.
We just
But also harder. Yeah.
yeah, we just like make instead of thinking, okay, maybe the problem isn't that Protoss is too easy. Maybe the problem is Zerg has like a million fucking tasks that you have to make constantly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
And if you have
constantly
the
inject.
APM to do it, then it's stronger.
Then
Yeah.
it's incredibly strong. We never talk about the fact that that maybe Zerg is a race that's designed about making so many tasks, and just like it's very evident that the balance is made about the fact that you have to do all of these tasks very well
Mhm.
for it to properly work. We never discuss about that. We never have those discussions because all of the discussions are Protoss overpowered. It's so easy. 50% of GM is
A
Protoss.
move carriers. Yeah.
Move carriers, whatever. And the same thing goes for overpowered unit. Why is the Wasp
But
frustrating? The Wasp is frustrating because it doesn't give you any chance to map control against.
mhm.
It,
Yeah.
it's very frustrating. It's not an interesting unit.
Yeah.
It doesn't have, and this is to quote my favorite meme, as someone said, I'm not gonna say who, because I've a high skill ceiling where all you're doing is constantly ramping and there
Yeah.
is no
A moving
defense.
it to locations where the opponent isn't. It's like, is that
What is
much skill
the
expression?
the skill ceiling? The
Yeah.
fact that you have more than one control group? Yeah,
Yeah.
it is a skill ceiling, but it's not the hone you think it is.
Yeah.
Like,
So I guess to pivot a little bit, I have kind of 2
yeah,
points. or two questions for you. You mentioned earlier about the deck building and how that can be compared to a
Yeah.
build order loss. Do you think, I guess, in the current state of battle aces, that there is such thing as a deck loss and you're just like
Yes.
fucked from loading screen? Okay.
Yes. Absolutely. In the current battle aces, there is very little doubt to me that there are situations in which you have to play much better. There is no such thing as a game you cannot win, right? Theoretically speaking.
Yeah.
This is
If
always
you
the
were
case,
parting
right?
on, if you were parting in that game, you would have won it.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
yeah,
But if we pick, like, for example, let's suppose that we have like 10 players that we know more or less from the other decks or from the fact that they have played other RTSs or any other
yeah.
indication that you like, that they are more or less of equal skill,
Mhm.
and we put them with certain combinations of that, you will not see a 50-50 rate, which you would
Okay.
expect.
Yeah.
Now, even outside of the normal variation. Now, that this is a shitty statistical experiment. Before people in the comment tell me you don't need 10 people, you need 100 million, and that's true. I'm not arguing about p values and shit. Sure, my point is, when you ask me, is there deck build or deck losses? It is my opinion that sometimes yes. I see this because, for example, when I play, like the Falcon is one of the biggest problems. I think the Falcons is responsible single-handedly for almost like 60 to 70% of those deck losses.
Yeah.
Okay? I think most other units can be reasons about. There are some problem with stuff like heavy ballistas, where sometimes if you don't have the right units and you fall, like if you play too defensive, you're like kind of forced into a leaning, or like situation where you're like, okay, I have to lean, but your opponent, if he's smart, knows that you have to lean, and as long as he gets, and that's more or less comparable to stuff like two-base carrier or stuff like that, right? So surely it's a bit more complicated than I'm letting it on.
Yeah.
But there are strong deck advantages,
Yeah.
deck losses. I don't know what you want to call them. I can think about stuff
It's
like
it's
Falcon.
maybe not 0% win rate, but if we're talking like 25% or
Maybe let's
around
say
there,
30,
then that's
70,
rough.
30, 70, for example, right?
Yeah.
But even if it was 64, for example, in Age of Empires 4, one of the things that broke my brain was the fact that there were like 65-35 matchups,
Yeah.
which was insane to me. But how does that's only problematic in the ladder? Why? Because Age of Empires in the top level allows for bans and picking several civilizations, right?
Yeah, I think it
On
works
different
similar
maps.
to the way that Pro Hearthstone works. I don't know if you know this. It's probably the same as Magic, but like you bring a few decks and then you can only play
Yeah,
each
yeah.
deck once. So you pick like game one, I'm going to play Priest, and then you can't play Priest for the rest of the series, for example. So it's that kind of situation, right? Where it's like I'm going to play English game one, but then I can't play English for the rest of the game. So at pro level, like you might get a bad matchup in game one, but maybe you've burned a faction that you were really not keen to play against. So it's like you're okay with losing the 70-30. Whereas on ladder, like you're saying, it's like I have a random chance of rolling the dice and getting a 70-30 loss here just because I picked one
Yeah,
list and the opponent picked another one.
it's not great. It's like the fact that there is those matchups is the reason why at the high level tournaments with its Hearthstone, Magic. No, well, Magic doesn't have bans. Magic has the
Yeah.
Pro Tour, but has the side decking rule, for example,
Yeah,
which is
you can
another
switch
way.
cards in and out. Yeah.
Yeah, you switch cards like to counter your opponent decks better, and side decking is one of the most important skills in Pro Magic. So it's that kind of things. Like you can clearly see that anything that has deck building in it almost inevitably has to add some kind of
Yeah, some drafting.
complexity,
So
some drafting or choosing more decks
this is
to
my
actually
kind of
prevent those
follow-on
situations.
question: is do you think a draft like pick ban similar to League, like even ranked League,
No.
is pick ban? You don't think that'd be a good idea in Battle Aces?
How long do you think at least a big ban phase can last?
I
It's
think.
more than the actual game.
Yeah, exactly. I think it would defeat the purpose of
The fast action
the fast
RTS, yeah.
action. Yeah,
Sure,
Yeah, ultimately it
maybe at
becomes
the pro
pointless.
level.
Yeah,
Sure, maybe at the pro level, because there you obviously you don't care about time. You're not there to have fun. You're there to compete. So you want to create. So maybe you can have draft and pick, or you can have multiple decks,
yeah.
or you can have multiple
Yeah,
maps,
I think
multiple
multiple decks
decks
will be
for
the way that it
multiple
goes at pro level,
maps.
right? Where you're like, okay, I lost to his Falcons in game one, so game two I have to pick a anti-Falcon tag, for example.
Yeah, but it could be interesting to do the way Hearthstone does it. That if you win with a deck,
Okay,
you
yeah,
cannot use it again.
yeah, yeah,
You have to use a different. Well, the problem with that would be the fact that Hearthstone has classes, so you can only
yeah.
bring 3 classes. And you have
There's
to
only
switch
9
classes,
discrete
right?
versus you. I can say
Yeah,
like, no, I had tier 3 cat bus in this deck, and this is a
yeah,
different deck, so I have one different tier 3 unit.
but the strategy is all the same, and everything else is the same.
Yeah,
So it's maybe
but
you
you
could
could
do like,
say
oh, you
like
have to
if you
have.
pick that unit once, it's banned for the rest of the thing. So like,
No, that also doesn't work because you run out of units
it
surprisingly
might
quickly.
work when there are 90 in the game, like 2 years down it.
Yeah, when there is 90, yes, but when there's 50, you run out of units really quickly. You might say, well, no, that's not true, Lorimbo. You're like 8, that's 24 out of 50. You have plenty of choices. Yeah, but not every choice works with every other choice.
Yeah, and there
And
aren't
then you have,
equal division across each slot. Like you might
yeah,
only
there's
have a
lot.
few tier 3 choices, and then you're just fucked
Exactly.
out of run out of tier 2.
Yeah, exactly. Like you have to pick the worst one. It could.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not impossible for it to work, but I wouldn't like these solutions.
So
Um,
my next question, which is a genuine question, I don't really know. The theory for League for a long time has been that new champs are overtuned because you're more likely to buy them with real money in League. That's RP, I think, still.
yes.
So when a new champ comes out, it costs, I don't know how much it costs. Let's say $10. So if you're gonna play straight after a new champ comes out, you can pay. You're more likely to pay real money. So therefore, you want the champ to be good. You want it to be strong. You want to see it being strong in games. So in a way, Riot are incentivized to have new champs be a little bit overtuned, so that it drives their sales up. It's a bit conspiratorial, and I don't
It is.
know how much it's gonna affect
I can tell you, as
players.
someone who has played a lot of League of Legends and a lot of Battle Lists, I can take my take. I actually had this discussion with Captain Alex, who kept telling me how much League is pay to win. I think it's the only person in the world that consider League of Legends a pay to win game because you can have more heroes to choose from.
Mm-hmm.
The reality of it is you pick the new champion, and then the new champion for the first patch inevitably has a fucking abysmal rate.
Yeah,
Regardless, very often it is overpowered,
yeah, but you also
but
don't
it
know how
still
to
has
play it.
an abyss, exactly, and you don't know the matchup, and you don't really understand the kit
Then
or how to fully abuse it.
yeah, I think there have
The
been a
problem with
few like new releases as well where the champ was like literally just underpowered and they had to have like massive
yeah,
buffs straight away.
yeah,
So I think it
or
hasn't proven to be true in League. But my point is
well,
that
there
it
is
technically
there
is
are
still there in battle
situations.
aces.
There are situations, and there is a good argument to be made that Riot has favorite champions, but the
Mm-hmm.
favorite champions are not the ones that you're thinking of. They
No,
are
the
not the
favorite
new
champion
ones.
is
Yeah.
Ari with the
Kaisa,
5k.
Harry, Kaisa. There are champions like Ezreal or Harry or
Yeah.
Kaisa that are so popular that they always have to be viable, no matter what, because it's 10% of the fucking games have a Ezreal in it or a Kaisa. They have insane pick rates, or Zed or Yasuo or Yone. All
Yeah.
of those champions are really popular. So the real thing you should think about that companies are incentivized because people will buy skins and stuff is that kind of deal. No, this is a perfect segue to actually talk about monetization.
Mm-hmm.
This is a problem, or it might be a problem, or it might not be a problem. But if I had to guess, it's probably gonna be a problem. I just made every possible prediction, so I'm right
That's the worst
always.
way to make predictions. Just predict
Yeah.
every possible outcome. It may or may
Yeah.
not happen, or it may not even exist.
Yeah, no, okay. Once again, let's talk about monetization.
Mm-hmm.
At the current rate, the way it works is that you start with one standard deck, which is the only one that Bonham plays, daily reminder. And then you have a rotation of 3 units, one per, not really per slot, one per tech tier, so one tier 1,
Okay.
2 tier 2s, so one for fly, one air and one ground,
One
and 2
ground.
tiers 3, one
One
air
air,
and
one
one
ground.
ground.
Cool.
So there are
And
6
yeah,
units. No, there's 5 units. No,
yeah,
actually,
that's
no.
5. It must be two
That's
tier
there are
ones.
two tier ones. One anti-ground and one anti-air. Sorry,
Yeah. That's fine. So that's very much a minority even of the units. If there's going to be 40 units at launch, that's still the
yeah.
minority of units.
And
But that's like a system that people are used to in like League, where it's like there's a
yeah,
free champ, you
free
can try it and
rotation.
see what you think, and then if you like it, you might buy it with the
Yeah.
in-game currency you've built up. Yeah.
So what's the problem then? Well, at the moment the current rotation is 1 day, but that's obviously for testing
Yep.
purposes. So don't expect it to be 1 day. Also, because I think it will be terrible for 1 day. So what if you cannot play that day, or what if you don't cannot play much, or what if you don't figure out how good the unit is? Like it's weird, right? Just no. It will be probably a week or something. The free week. The problem that I have with this is that at the moment the units cost a lot of in-game money. There is no way of buying it with real credit cards, with a real credit card or with real cash, but there is definitely a very grindy aspect to it. Now, I played a shit ton because I'm addicted. I get addicted to every RTS. So I played a lot of it. So I have a lot of money, and even I can like basically afford maybe half of the units at this point. Not even probably. Despite the fact that I played 60 hours. To get a new unit, you have to grind. You have to play for like 5, 6, 8 hours before you can afford it. This is also the game in other. This is also the case in other games such as LoL and so on. But LoL never has people buying champions with money. It's like at such a minute proportion of it. Because you just play one champion, you don't need synergies, and you all usually just spam one champion. You don't change a lot of champions. You win a role usually, maybe, and you play like 3, 4, 10 champions if you're trolling. If you
And
play
then
10 different champions and you're in my ranked game, I'm
then you're
reporting
not
you.
good. Yeah.
Yeah, then you're not
And
good.
then you just buy skins for those few champs you actually do play.
No, some people just play basket. There are ARAM players that play every champion and put skin for every champion, right? But
True.
that's ARAM, which is very fun indeed, but it's not usually considered the main competitive mode
Sure.
for League of Legends. So this is the kind of the X part, right? Because you start the game, you have the basic deck. The basic deck contains some units that are really not good, right? And then you run into the problem of maybe someone who has paid money or has paid things to get the good units. Eventually, you can get the good units too. But if your objective is that friendly player experience, that's kind of sketchy, right? To know, like, and if it goes wrong, it becomes Clash Royale. Or you have to
And
spend thousand. There
yeah.
is no way of playing Clash Royale at top level without spending thousand of money. Free to play is not real. It's a meme.
Yeah.
You can there is like 1,000 videos about it describing the math, how much money you actually spend, how much time you will take with free chest to get the good units, and because you just get level ups.
Yeah.
Now this is not as
That
bad
was
as
the
Clash
meme with
Royale.
Diablo Immortal, do you remember? Where it's like, yeah, if you put any kind of money into it, it would just like spit like hundreds of dollars worth of stuff back at you, and if you tried to play it free to play, you were like just fucked forever. Yeah, it's
No, it was actually it would be that just to get the good stuff, you would require an insane amount of money. It was the opposite.
but if you
Arthur.
were free to play, it would
Oh
it
no,
took you
you
like
got
200 years or something to get
no,
like
no,
anything
no, no. If
decent
you
out
were
of it.
paid to play, you got 200 years, and if you were paid to win, you will take $200,000 to
That game was
actually like
fucked. Are the
someone.
servers even still on? I think it is.
Thanks, Bleed. That's such a good goated. There's someone who spent 100K trying to get an item and got it like after 116K.
Yeah, I remember that now. Yeah,
116K.
you're right. Yeah, because he was streaming, right? And he was like, "Yeah,
Yeah,
we're
yeah,
we're
yeah, yeah.
paying to play until we get this one item." Yeah, and it was a fucking lot of money.
And the problem was I
Yeah,
wasn't even like a fucking, cosmetic item that was super rare or anything. Like, no, it was like the most game breaking item in the game.
yeah.
It's dumb. But,
So there's no loot boxes in Battle Aces so far.
that's the other pitfall, right? Like, how far can we monetize that? And also, David Kim is a based gamer, whatever you want to say, but he has to make money somehow. They
Yeah.
have to get back on the cost. So where is that money coming from? As far as I understand, the game is gonna be free. So are there gonna be really powerful units that cost a lot of in-game money and you can pay and get them immediately? That's immediately a red flag for me.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
At the moment, that is not so much the case because most of the broken
Still
stuff,
in
you
free to
only
play
need one or
beta where
two.
it's still that's tough. I think
Yeah,
the
but
other
it is
side of
a bit.
things is the cosmetics. And by the way, we did get confirmation it is involved. They are involved with Tencent in some way. Tencent obviously have loads of these like free to play. So like Tencent is Genshin, right? I'm not crazy for that one.
No, that's
Are
how
they
I.
not? Yeah, you're right. But
No.
anyway, they're in League. They're in the League mobile game. All sorts of things. Is Tencent. Valorant
In
is
China, there are like a million games owned by Tencent.
yeah.
It's
This
like
is
one of the biggest thing.
yeah
Valorant is also from
yeah.
Tencent.
So
The Arcane is also made by Tencent, just so you know.
so these are all driven largely by cosmetics. Valorant, I think, definitely is right. I literally have never played Valorant. Talking about my ass, but
Yeah.
it's like gun skins and that sort of thing. And I wonder the cosmetics in StarCraft made decent money as far as I'm aware. Like the war chests made money and that sort of thing. They're generally pretty poorly liked because in a game that fast, the visual clarity is really important. And people, I mean, the most famous one is a stalker. No, it's a immortal skin that looks like a stalker. And
Yeah.
I don't know if I would. I don't know if I fall for that one, but it's definitely a thing that people aren't a fan of in RTS games. And I wonder if we see really heavy, like customization
I
and loads of
disagree with you.
skins.
I think people really like
Well, hang on.
Warchest.
No, people like the war chest. Some people didn't like the clarity. There's always been this like idea of like, can I turn my opponent's skins off? It's like, well, that defeats the point of them having a skin, surely, because otherwise
No,
it's just
because
useless.
I don't. No,
But here's
I
the thing you're
want to see
forgetting.
this
Here's the thing
skin.
you're forgetting.
Yeah.
When you have, if we're 2 years down the line, and there are 90 units in the game, and each of them have 3 skins, this is starting to get towards like league levels of needing to know what everything looks like before you can get into the game. And especially a lot of the units, as I understand, are like bigger or smaller versions of other units from different tiers. So there's like crabs and then there's like bigger crabs.
Hmm.
If you're starting to like change the look of them, the visual clarity starts to decrease and you start to get to a point where it's like yeah, but people I okay, here's what I say. I can see a line to walk between keeping things very visually clear while also having skins that are really interesting and cool. I worry that it's a very fine line to walk where like to go for really cool skins that have a very
I
unique
also don't know
look,
how
you
well
also really severely reduce the visual
I
clarity.
have a
Don't
bigger concern. I don't know how well they will sell. I don't know how much money was put into it. I don't know.
Mhm.
Like it's the biggest concern with any of these games, Stormgate, Zero Space, Battle Ace, it's always will they recoup their losses? Because if
Mhm.
they aren't, if they're going down, the game is
Yeah,
going
the
down,
servers
bro.
don't stay on for very long if you're
like the-
running in the red.
like
That's for sure.
if if your game is burning a gajillion billion dollars per week and is not making the money back, there's only so much goodwill a company will put in to promote the
Yeah,
game and make
I
it stay
will
alive.
say Battleace is in a weird spot in that Zero Space and Stormgate both already have advertised campaign modes and co-op modes, and
Yeah.
they've explicitly said Stormgate, for example, has explicitly said you're going to pay for like co-op missions and campaign missions in like sections. So similar to how StarCraft did with the Nova campaigns, where you pay
Yeah.
just for that batch of missions. Actually, they've done it now for all of them, right? The game is free to play, but if you want to play Legacy of the Void, you have to pay for the Legacy of the Void thing on that account.
Well, that's only after it became free to play. Originally,
Yeah,
you
of
had to buy
course.
the game.
Yeah, of
The
course.
campaign was also. In
Yeah,
fact, I will tell you an even more obscure thing that I
mhm,
remember clearly. So remember, as I said, I started playing RTS in 2020, but I did play the StarCraft campaign for a lot of years, and I
yeah,
did dip my toes. And by dip my toes, I mean exactly 5 games in between 2013 and 2017. 5 games total. I distinctly remember that when I bought the game when Earth of the Swarm came out, because I saw a review for the Earth of the Swarm campaign, and I tried ladder like 2 games maybe, and there was a separate ladder
yeah,
for Wings of Liberty and
yeah,
Earth of the Swarm.
yeah. I used to switch between them.
Which is
Into Legacy, I used to play Hot Ladder because I preferred it. Like it was dead, so you would get to like there was a GM for a bit. There were like 2 GM ladders, but I think mostly basically you get to masters in like no time because there was nobody playing the games.
that's insane to me, bro. Like, it's such a weird thing. It's such a weird thing that you can play like on different patches and shit.
Did they
It's
get
like
rid of that? Can you actually not?
Yeah, of course they got rid of it. You cannot play Art of the
That's
Swarm. Well,
true.
you can play
You can
customs,
custom play. Yeah, you can play custom Heart of the Swarm games. Yeah.
but you definitely can't. You don't have a ranking or anything.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
that would
yeah,
be
yeah. No, if
insane.
you check my profile, you'll see. Like, well, if you check, because it says like when the seasons finish, you'll see that some of the
Yeah,
seasons have the same date. If you click the little drop down for Wings versus Hots, because I was playing Hots into Legacy for sure. But
yeah,
yeah, that's a big way they're that's a big way that Stormgate
Y-
at least are planning on financing, and that doesn't have this kind of like visual clarity kind of aspect. Battle Aces, I think, don't have
yeah,
anything along that
absolutely.
line. I don't really see how a
Yeah.
campaign would work in Battle Aces. It's definitely pitched way more towards the like competitive 1v1 2v2 kind of thing.
So where is the money coming from? Once again, that's the problem. I'm just worried that it's gonna come from the units, and then, as much as I fought back with Captain Alex about this, if that is the case, then the game definitely becomes pay to win, and nobody wants a pay to win game,
But
right?
it's tricky, right? Because you're incentivized to have the game be pay to win if you're the company. Because otherwise, if the unit is just as good as the other unit, it's like why would I bother buying that other unit from you when I
Because
just
it's
use this for
fun,
free
because I
when I'm
like the
doing it?
decks,
Yeah,
because it's fun, because I like the decks. Like make the game good, and then we can maybe talk about it, right? Maybe we can actually
here's my
think about
pitch. I'm
how we
gonna
want to
talk
go. Yeah.
directly to David Camp. Put ads in the game everywhere. Sell ad
No,
space. Sell ad space between every game. Pop up, the little skip thing, and
please
here's your
don't.
biggest ad sell. All things
Please
real time,
don't.
baby. We're gonna put all things real time in the game. I want billboards on the map that say all things real time. YouTube.com at / at all things real time. We'll prop up Battle Aces. Call me. No, you don't want ads.
No.
Do you know? Can I just
No.
rant for a second? Fucking Amazon Video has ads. I pay you so I can watch your content, and now I have to
Yeah.
stop and watch an ad every
It's
unskippable
almost
ads.
like
It's like
yeah,
the
it's
fuck is your
almost it's
problem?
almost it's almost like paying for content or results in more companies wanting more and more money for the same
It's
content and then putting ads. It's
absurd.
almost like Netflix did the exact same thing. We're saying, oh, the whole point of Netflix was that you could watch everything in one place without watching ads. And then we're like, no, actually, to do that,
Actually,
they were
you can
thinking.
watch
It's not
ads.
like Uber did the same thing with like the things where like Tom Nicholson has a very good video for it. You should watch it. It's called the shitification of everything. It's really
Okay,
good.
I will watch
Like
it.
explain how these companies put like different tiers.
Yeah,
How the first there is like one package and everything is included in the package. The service is just good. Then they have to make more money, so they split into tiers. So now you get the stuff that previously was
premium tier is shit
normal is the
tier.
premium tier.
Yeah,
But if you want, you can have the slightly cheaper, shittier tier. And then they do this like with 4 or 5 tiers, like Uber. You can fucking get the super luxurious tier, and
yeah,
the same car, but the pool of car doesn't change.
yeah.
Doesn't change. So if you before you had like
Yeah, before you would
10
just
cars,
get a nicer car. Yeah, now it's
yeah, 10 cars, and
now
one
it's
was
no, that's
nicer
another
than the
premium.
other.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's how Uber Premium. It's like
it's so
it's,
stupid, and it's stupid for two. Firstly, Amazon Prime is a good deal because I get Prime delivery on everything, and then I got Twitch Prime for free, and they shitted that up, by the way. But and then Prime Video you also get included in Amazon Prime, and they shitted that up. But the problem is, if you couldn't afford to give all of these things for the price of the Amazon thing, then just I don't know, change the price of the Amazon thing and say this is
no,
the new
because
price.
the
But
point of it.
don't drip it. At the moment it's dripped. It's like you pay one price and then there's another price for this, another price for that. It's like just
Yeah,
make
yeah,
it
yeah.
one price. Just tell me what the one price
No,
is.
because that would result in less money. It's way
Of
easier to
course.
spend money once you have done the first
Yeah, of
purchase. The
course.
second is
And
way
then you're like,
easier
oh, I guess it's only
in your
$5 a
mind.
month. And I already pay for Netflix and that. Here's the second point, you fucking idiots. Pirating is way better because I go on a pirate website. There's one ad at the start. I click to close it, and I watch the whole thing with no ads instead of you're interrupting, cutting in for commercials and
I'm
shit.
just saying that there are several pirate sites that don't have any ads. I have
It's
no fucking clue how they make their money. They
absurd.
probably sell my
They're
data.
mining Bitcoin on your phone as we speak. That's why it's
No, no, no,
overheating
no.
all the time.
But but the interesting part is that unironically, I'm not gonna say the name of the site. There is a site that has a name very similar to Netflix that has everything from every Netflix, Amazon Prime, everything, and it runs better than Netflix, and it doesn't have ads.
Oh, ads.
I
And
have
it's like
no fucking clue.
the
I feel
guys are so dumb because I mean it's gonna make them more money because they've run the calculations and they know it does make them more money.
yeah,
It's
it
just
always
annoying
makes
because
more
at the
money.
same time there are people who for whatever reason are like I'd rather do this the right way. I know in my heart that it's illegal and I could get a knock at the door if I illegally stream stuff and they'll put
So
me in the
true.
back of a van and fucking kill me in Guantanamo Bay for streaming The Boys on Netflix or whatever the website is, versus like the people that are like, actually, this is fucking stupid. I'm not giving another $5. Fuck yourself. It's just like I'm paying you for convenience and you've made it inconvenient, and that's when I get really angry. Is when my life gets a little bit inconvenient. I
Yes,
say that because I have a
yes.
podcast.
Not the war, not the terrible things
this
that
is
happen,
this is
not the
what really
starving
gets me.
children.
This is what really gets me
No.
to go to the polls. This is what really this is what really drives the middle class vote.
So true. Art, Art would vote for whoever will force Netflix to go back to its original ways. UK parties. If you are
Yeah.
listening, just add like a random Netflix
Just
thing.
be like, also,
I'm
by the
sure
way,
you will.
Netflix, Amazon, and YouTube, we're cutting the ads. Fuck it. Oh, can
Fuck
you
them.
imagine how cool that would be if they were like YouTube? You don't get to operate in the UK, and if you keep running ads like that.
The European Union does that to actually quite interesting degree. I'm not kidding. This is why one of the reasons why I like the European Union because there's a bunch of laws that is like I don't give a fuck if you want like to sell like for example the whole cookie part and like
No, that
stuff like
annoys the shit out of me.
data mining and stuff. That's all the European unions. Like we're like no,
No,
you cannot just take
that's become way more annoying. Because now, when you have a medical emergency and you Google like, "Why does my left nut hurt?" and it's like,
yes
"Do you accept
because that's
cookies?" and it's like, "Bro, I need to know if I'm about to die. Be real."
yes, because that was made on purpose by the company to like make the app like to make the
Yeah, that's
regulations
true.
harder to pass. Because they're like, oh yeah, I'm gonna. It's called malicious compliance.
Yeah,
I'm gonna comply in the most
yeah, but it's gonna
like
suck and you're not gonna like it, and then you're gonna tell
yeah,
them to get rid of the law again. Yeah, this is true.
yeah, exactly. It's very manipulative. Anyway, we are still
Okay.
far off the topic. The point is, I'm a bit skeptical of the monetization practice
Yeah, for sure.
that's gonna be in Battle Aces, and I really hope they find a nice, clean solution
Yep.
because otherwise, or that the cost of the game wasn't too high. I don't think they have disclosed publicly much of
I
their.
will say we haven't talked about this yet. It does look good. I think for the
It
most
looks
part,
good.
it
It
looks really
controls
nice.
very nicely.
Yeah, which is not
It's very
easily done. It's not
responsive.
easy to get right. So I think it
Yeah.
can't have been cheap. That's all I'll say. We've got
Okay.
15 minutes left. Let's talk about Stormgate.
Okay. No. We're gonna talk about Storming in another video because I want to do our video. You
What do
know
you want
what
to
we
talk about
can
now?
talk about?
Okay.
The Q&A.
Okay, I
The
wasn't there.
Q&A.
I was walking the dog. You're gonna have to explain
Okay.
what our buddy D Kim said. Should we try and
So,
get him on the podcast? By the way, should we reach out? You think he'll do it?
no way. I don't think David Kim will accept. I can try. And,
Okay.
maybe
We
next
need to get some underling at Uncapped. Some like the janitor. Now with the janitor of Uncapped will be like, whose office is the messiest? Super like David Kim's office. He always leaves coffee cups on the side, and we're like, wow, that's sick.
yeah, we need inside
Yeah.
information on the state of
Yeah.
Uncapped.
Live on the podcast, the janitor steals paperwork and scans it and sends it to us to leak.
Yes. No, what I wanted to talk is because
Q&A. You want to
there's
explain the Q&A briefly, really quick?
okay. David Kim did a Q&A publicly. Anyone could join. There are access to the Discord, which is public. For some reason, they fucked up some systems, so only the people with certain permissions could actually raise their hand and ask their question vocally. But you could write, anyone could write a question in the chat, and almost every single question, up to the time limit, because David Kim couldn't fucking be there for 5 hours, got replied, including some of the more contentious questions. So why am I talking about this? Is because I was very pleasantly surprised by David Kim. Now, I never had any experience of David Kim. When I started playing StarCraft in 2020, I think David Kim was already out. All I hear about David Kim is how terrible of a person is. He looks like he caused every war in the world, ruined the balance of StarCraft, ruined every RTS in the world at the same time, responsible for every, like, single-handedly
Remember
as the
Arab Spring?
yeah,
Excellent.
like, single-handedly responsible for every bad meta that SC2 ever had. So David Kim is always talked about in a very negative light, right? And there are definitely things that he is known for that are true. He's very stubborn. He has his own vision, that's for sure, right? But one thing that I cannot say, and that I wish I could say the same about certain other developers, that he was very clear in his vision, incredibly transparent, even amongst some of the quite unethical things about the game. What am I referring to? Bots. So I have to address this. I'm sorry, this is gonna thank me. David Kim doesn't want to come into the podcast because I mentioned bot, but actually might because he had replied to it. He
Yeah.
never hid
No,
it.
I think it's
So
silly to have a feature and then not talk about the feature. It's so I think they're
so
open
the
about it
problem
too.
The problem, what's the problem?
Mhm.
At the moment, you can play battle aces, and there is a certain chance that gets higher the more games you lose, that you get paid to a bot. The bots are terrible, and are basically free MMR. Like, you would need to actually, really, really hint to lose a game. They are so much worse than their level that it's ridiculous. Okay? And this is why people realize, because you can play only so many players that play in a very the same way, always
Yeah.
terribly, don't react to harass and stuff. Like the bots are not well made. They were obvious, so people
And
figured out that they were bots quickly.
they don't leave games, right? Is like the main way you can
Yeah,
tell.
they don't leave game.
Okay.
One of the main ways. There are some
Cool.
real people that also don't leave games.
Yeah.
So that's not a fair.
They're
But
in,
yeah,
they're in place.
so
It's fine. Some of those are bots too.
so
Let's be honest.
there's when we started playing the game, well, I didn't notice it much myself because I shot up through the ranking very quickly.
Mhm.
So I
Do
didn't
you think you
actually
played any?
encounter.
Actually, is it?
Yes, definitely. Statistically, yes,
But
surely.
like,
The first ten games proving grounds are only boss. That's supposed to be the
okay,
tutorial.
okay,
You don't even gain MMR.
yeah,
I'd certainly play at least like a couple at the start.
yeah.
So I
Producer card is
remember, but
saying yes as well.
yeah, almost surely. Like
Hmm.
I don't remember any specific bot because it's been a while. Like it's been a couple of days. I played like 200 games since then. It's kind of hard. I was about then. I thought there was no way because my experience was so far removed. And to be honest, I also think that the bot thing was a bit overstated in
Hmm.
the sense that there were a lot of bots and people did get them quite often. So there was
I
definitely, but also
find it.
people accused random other people that were just bad at the game
Yeah,
of being bots,
I
and
find it
that
quite
was so
unlikely that
insulting.
if you're good, you're going to hit that many bots because eventually you're just going to get past the MMR that they're at. And also, if you
Yes,
played very early on at the start of the beta, it's very unlikely that you can't find a game in a short enough time that they need to pair you with a
it's
bot.
not about okay. So I'll just relay
Okay.
David Kim answer. Okay, to the best of my interpretation, to the
Mhm,
best of
sure.
my ability. Okay, so he
By
was
the way, if you
asked to
get this
make
wrong enough,
clarity
you might come on the podcast just to clear everything
to
up.
correct yeah
Yeah, to
to
correct
clear
the
the record.
record. Yeah.
Oh, should I just like bullshit my
Yeah,
way
yeah,
through
yeah,
this?
yeah, 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 yeah.
Oh, so he said basically they're developing a new AI that's better than pro players,
Yeah,
and the
yeah.
boss are like
They
the
got the
first
guys
step to
from
conquering mankind
they got the
from
guys from Alpha Star to come and
from.
program a bot.
No, okay, that's not what he said. He said, "Yes, we do have boss. First, we never denied it.
Mhm.
That was surprising because it's a very embarrassing thing. People were going wild with the speculation, saying, "Oh, like they're doing this to boost their popularity artificially. They're doing this into tricking players and stuff." So the way David Kim explained is the following: there are ranks in the games that goes from like bronze to top ace, which is the most one. And he said, I don't really think that I want the game to be competitively set from the get go. In other words, my interpretation of what he said was that he wanted the game between bronze and top ace to be slightly more forgiving. And he talked about an experience at Blizzard where people will come to them and said, "Oh, I've been stuck in bronze for 4 years,
Mhm.
but I know it's just because I'm bad." And he thought at the time, but why is there not a way to develop a system such as someone who's still bad, but there is no way you're bad and play 2,000 games that don't improve. You're most likely just improving at the same rate as other players.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean,
Is there a way?
if you play now on a new account, let's say you're leveling on an A or something, if you hit a
Yeah,
player in gold, you're way better than I ever remember gold
they,
being. Like gold when I
yeah,
was playing was like, oh, you have 3 stalkers 4 minutes into the game, and I could just kill you with drones. It's like people genuinely are like improving even at the very lowest of leagues. Yeah.
yeah, right. So you were saying, well, to characterize that improvement somewhat, to make the player feel regardless of whether or not they're improving faster or not.
Hmm.
We are gonna add a bot to mellow the experience down. This is not the only thing that actually contributes to the experience. There is quite a bit. I think you gain more points than you lose. I'm pretty sure about this.
Okay.
You
So
cannot lose
it's not
points below
zero
rank.
sum. It's not zero
Yeah,
sum.
not at the bottom level. I think it's like it's scaled up. So once you above 7k, I'll explain in that second. One
Okay.
second. And then you also apparently you're getting 150 and losing 250. And then there's
Yeah,
also
really bad
obviously
stairs.
artificial MMR. It's definitely not zero sum because there is artificial increase from the bots, right? The bots are very easy to beat and they are
Yeah, and
present.
they don't
It's not
lose them, I guess.
it's not, yeah, well, they are bots. You can just make a new bot.
True.
It's also unclear to me up to which level bots are. I
Hmm.
speculate up to around 5k, but it might be up to around
You
7k,
might
which
need
is
to
top pace.
explain because these numbers sound very high. So you might need to
I
explain
mean,
what
the
that actually
MMR gains are
means.
just way bigger. I just scaled up.
Oh,
That's
so
all.
what MMR is top ace, for example?
7k.
Okay, so
That's the
is
every 1k is
a
a
new
league.
league.
So you, yeah. So you
Okay.
go bronze. So you have unranked from 0 to a k, or iron, whatever you want to call
Hmm.
it. Then you have bronze, silver, gold, platinum, emerald, diamond, and top ace.
Okay.
And everyone is
So you're
1k.
saying all
And
the bots should be about Emerald League, or
no,
no,
they're
the
lower
bots will
than that.
stop at about Emerald League.
Yeah,
Yeah, I see.
I think so.
Hmm.
So I'm since I've been, but as I said, I've encountered very little bot myself, and I can't remember a specific incident
Yeah.
except it was very funny. My promotion to top ace was against a guy that had the most bot name ever. It's called like Noob 1011, which is a real person. Shout out to Noob 1011. Was my top ace promotion, which when we were talking about bots while I was doing it, and someone said that, come on, there is no way Noob 1011 is a real guy, but it is a real guy. It just has a bot sounding name.
Silly
That's
noob
the other thing
1011.
was lack of transparency, which it was
Yeah.
unclear
So
when you were playing a bot. They had very human
yeah,
sounding name,
yeah.
and
Like they're not all called like Murderbot or something. Like is that the Stormgate thing? Is something like that? I don't
yeah, I
know.
think so.
So yeah, and this is something I messaged you about actually when we were talking about the Q&A thing. I have another question, which is, do the bots learn? Like, are they
No,
training from human? Did you
no,
convince
no.
the
The
humans?
bots. No, I don't. But the bots, as far as I can tell, had like exactly one build. In fact,
Okay.
you could spot a bot from the fact that they had the developed units, the one that cost more, like the not money, but you had to grind for
Hmm.
day one, and they all had the same deck with
Okay.
a lot of these units.
So like
Now there
at a
are people that
time,
all are,
yeah,
and they
it's
were
a time
not
where you
content
couldn't grind
creators.
for them, but they also
Yeah.
didn't have the content creator pass that unlocks all
Yeah,
the units,
they
basically.
have two builds. They expand slightly later than at the start of the game. They expand like a couple of seconds later compared to where is normal to
Hmm.
most players to expand. Like they're they don't react to worker arrows at all. So
Hmm.
if you have a crab, you just kill every single Moon line, and they only rally units to around the base. So your crab might get stopped accidentally because it enters the range of one of the units, but it's never intentional, right?
Yeah, they don't
There
send the
is no
unit to deal with
react.
their
Yeah,
crabs.
I'm not sure how I feel about the bot things. Now,
Hmm.
to this credit, David Kim in the whole Q&A, not only on the bot thing, was always very clear
Hmm.
about many things. He never actually there was the only question. There was one question he couldn't respond to.
Hmm. Is it
As
which
in
one
was
of the units is woke? No.
no, it's not that. It's so weird to me because you would expect it to be a hard question or a question, that was embarrassing or not. No,
Yeah.
the one question, he like was unable. He had to get someone else to answer for him. Was what's your favorite flying unit? I don't know why he was unable to reply to that. Just like fucking got
We
stunned.
also need to say that
Like
he's
15
played a
seconds.
decent amount. Like David Kim was on
He's
the
played.
leaderboard.
I matched him
Yeah,
personally, so he definitely played. But like, and also, it's not like he knows a lot about the units. Like he talk
yeah,
about a lot of units. It's like he doesn't. Oh, this guy is so far removed. He hasn't
yeah,
even played the game. He doesn't even. It's just like he just got stunned for 20 seconds. It was like the weirdest thing ever. It's
yeah.
like what I thought that maybe the reason was that he could think that, oh, if he says this, he likes this unit, and then that unit
Oh,
is
and
too
then everyone, yeah,
powerful.
they'll be like, it's because it's his favorite unit. He's biased.
But it was such a like it was so weird to see David Kim reply to the bot question, which was very embarrassing. Like you kind of you got caught
Yeah, yeah,
having bots, not disclosing it before.
yeah,
MMR inflation has a bunch of problems with it. And
yeah,
it's like he had no problem
yeah.
replying. He wasn't even. Everyone thought he was gonna get skipped. Everyone thought he was gonna get ignored. We were making bets, and the guy respect. He picks the question. He doesn't dodge it, and he replies clearly. Yes, there are bots. Yes, this is how it works. And never think, right? And then the favorite unit question, like you could,
Is it because it's the cat boss and he's embarrassed?
but he could have said like any unit at all.
I think he might have just gone completely blank and just couldn't think of a unit, and
I
then
also think
just
I think
panicked
it's
and was
just
like,
just
why can't I think of a unit? Yeah. Because in the clip, this is hilarious. I don't know if you've seen it. There's a guy, and he like runs up to people in New York, and he's like, "For $1, name a woman," and then people are like, "It's like name a woman." Just keep shouting "name a woman" at them, and they can't do it. It's hysterical. It's so good. Anyway, that's you with David Kim being like, "Name an air unit," and he's like,
It was the weirdest thing ever. How he was so prepared with very good responses to all of the questions, which were not pre-prepared, by the way.
Mhm.
They were questions by real people on the moment, so it wasn't a formal interview. It was a Q&A.
"Yeah."
But then the easiest low ball question ever, like the PR question almost, like it doesn't get. What the fuck?
So here's my question. Then we've got just a few minutes left. Do you
Yeah.
think the way that Uncapped are going about developing their game in general is a good way? Do you think they're like? Do you appreciate the transparency? Are you finding kind of
I
how are they
don't like the
running
bots.
things well so far? Okay.
I understand the bots, but I don't like them. I like the transparency. I feel like the Uncapped Games people have been quite transparent. And
Mm-hmm.
even, for example, David Kim has written some posts on Reddit.
Mm-hmm.
And, you can
Yeah, I saw
agree,
those.
you
Yeah.
can disagree, but it was always very clear why they were doing things, right? So
Yeah.
people like the mortar got nerfed, and at the top level, the mortar was already being substituted by the Crusader, for example, and because it was countering and stuff like that. And it was very clear about it felt like the mortar was too punishing for new players. The mortar was very unfun to play against. Like it was all
Yeah.
of the things that it did were like, okay, we fucked up. This is where we fucked up. This is where we need to
This is the
be.
change we're
So
making and why. Yeah.
the amount of communication was plenty and pretty good, I would say. Um, the game itself feels fun. I think it's quite imbalanced at the moment. I've said this before, but I think that's fixable
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
it's
Yeah. No, for
balanced.
sure. And it's
I
still
think
early. It's not been out a week. Yeah.
most of the design, well, as I said, design and balance are more or less the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
But most of the design has in at least ideas behind how a unit should work. The role they should cover are fine. Like there is no unit that's like two all around
Mm-hmm.
or stuff like at least in theory. Now, practically speaking, unfortunately, there are units that are that problematic. But I can see how they will how they could be moved to their intended role rather to their actual role, which tends to happen in the game.
And just
I'm a
because I'm
bit
sure.
skeptical of the monetization aspect. I'm a
Sure.
bit skeptical of the deck building. I'm a bit skeptical of competitive integrityness at
Mm-hmm.
the top level
Yeah.
or how tournaments are gonna be run.
Mm-hmm.
It's more of a casual. It's a lot of fun. It's a
Yeah.
really a lot of fun. You should try it. Like everyone thinks like
Yeah.
it looks like a mobile game. Yeah, sure. It looks like try it. Maybe you try it and then you don't like it. Sure. I enjoyed my time with it. I
Mm-hmm.
like the fast pace. I like
You like the
the fact that
RTS?
Yeah, I like the FARTS. Yes, I like FARTS. Yes,
Yeah, I know.
absolutely.
And I'm just to
Especially my
be
own.
full disclosure, because I know someone will ask, uh, how hard have they filleted you to say all these nice things about their game?
David Kim is under my desk right now,
Oh, that's
and
nice.
because of this joke, he will never come to our
Oh,
pod.
you ruined
No.
it.
Uh, okay. By the way,
Yes.
I wanted to say one thing on the closing before we actually close.
Yeah, this is the answer. Go for it.
Do you know why you like? Okay, I've gotten some accusations
Yeah,
about my opinions being influenced by the fact that I had worked at one point for as a consultant for Zero Space.
yeah.
Do you know
You
why
are a
you
shell.
even know that? It's because I fucking disclosed it to you. You absolute fucking dingus. The only reason why you're aware of who consulted who and you are not aware of the other people who consulted for the games is because I had the integrity of disclosing it. It's very weird to be like, oh, full disclosure, I did have a time in this, but these are still my own opinions. And you can track that even before I got employed, I had exactly the same opinions and I always make the same talking points and I'm always very consistent about, and when I change my mind I say I change my mind, this is why. The fact that I disclose something for full integrity and honesty and people use that against me saying, oh, it's very hard for you to like this will be like more of a thing about when we do the Stormgate thing,
Yeah.
which spoiler alert for the next thing, I had a lot of problem with the latest integration and now we can finally talk about it. Oh, by the way, thank
Integration.
for David King for not fucking putting an NDA
Yeah, that's
so
been really
people can
good.
actually see the product and
Yeah.
buy it instead of relying on hype. One of the problems that I had with a lot of the problems that I had with Stormgate were made apparent to me to the community, to Discord by private posting and reviews that were not on the channel, and I still got accused of shilling for what? For what? For what? Am I paid by Zero Space if they do well? I think if RTS fail,
They didn't give
they
you
all.
shares for your like few hours of
Yes.
consulting you did.
Yes, the $50 I got paid once. Yes, those both my opinion. Those are the things that felated me. Absolutely. Not the fucking dumb decisions
Also,
that developers have made or they.
you wrote the manifesto for free, and you wrote loads of
Yeah.
feedback posts on the Stormgate Discord for
Also
free as
for
well.
free.
So
Yes. And in both the manifesto and the feedbacks, I always try to have a neutral tone. I always explain clearly why I like or I don't like things. And then when I get fucking accused of being a shill, it's so frustrating because people recognize, oh, you got paid $50, you are a shill, but they don't recognize their own bias. They don't think, oh, I've invested 400 games and I've like bought into the hype, clan and sink. I don't want even to admit to myself that I could have been wrong about the future of this or the other game, or that maybe that this or that person is not as nice as I think. Like, come on, guys. Like, let's try to be mature conversation. If you think I have bad points, tell me I have done bad points. Don't accuse me of being a shill when I've specifically fucking uh, every single point that I've ever made in my entire life regarding RTS, I've always had plenty of discussions about and plenty of things. Holy fuck! For someone like, how the fuck do you accuse me of being a shit where I have fucking 24 hours of content of me just talking to the camera about the signs and shit and why I like this or not? I'm the worst shit ever. $50 for like fucking a
I'm a
hundred
good
hours.
shill. I'm a good shill. I want it on record. If you pay me, I'll say whatever you want. I have no moral boundaries.
Yeah.
This is a message to. I'm gonna bleep this to the. No, I'm not gonna say it. I'll do it. I just love money. Thank you for
Yes,
watching. This has
absolutely.
been episode 1 of season 2 of All Things Real Time. Thank you for
I
following through
remember
this.
our always true motto:
Yep.
if there's money there, we don't care.
Always true. Don't forget to like and
Oh,
subscribe. Do check us out on Spotify. I finally put like 3 episodes on Spotify. It was tough. It was really rough. It took me ages.
yeah,
It's not
you have to
easy.
click two buttons.
It's 3, and that's the problem. Is one of them was in review because I didn't click the third button. It's so stupid. Basically, you click upload, and then guess what? It doesn't upload. You have to click another button to actually publish it.
Yeah,
Anyway, I clicked that. I clicked the third button.
dreadful,
I did
really.
it 3 times, so that's 9 buttons. It's really hard. But thank
Worse
you
than
guys.
children dying, actually.
Stick around. My life is so hard.
Dreadful.
Stick around. Stormgate next week, and more fun after that.
Bye bye. See
Grey
ya.
goo if we get 200 subs. No.